The world is defined by the absence of light. Here, on the edge of the airfield, the darkness is not merely a lack of sun, but a physical weight, a heavy blanket of charcoal and indigo that presses down against the flat, frozen earth. The wind is the only thing that moves with any real conviction. It comes from the north, sweeping across the open plains, carrying with it the scent of old snow and the bitter, metallic taste of deep winter. It rattles the corrugated iron sheets of the hangar roof, a rhythmic, hollow drumming that sounds like a slow heartbeat in the chest of a giant. Inside the hangar, the air is still, but it is not warm. It holds a profound chill, a stillness that seeps into the bones of the wood and the iron and the canvas. The temperature here is a trapped thing, a preserved fragment of the freezing night outside, shielded only from the bite of the gale but not from the pervasive, creeping frost. In the center of this cavernous space, the machine waits. It is a shape of shadows and faint reflections, drawn in heavy lines of graphite and smudged pastel against the gloom. The biplane sits heavily on its tires, the rubber hard and cold against the oil-stained concrete floor. The wings are long, pale rectangles stretching out into the dimness, their canvas skins taut and doped, shimmering slightly with a dull, matte finish where the lantern light catches them. The light comes from a single hurricane lantern hanging from a wooden beam near the nose of the aircraft. The flame is small, a weak tongue of orange inside the glass chimney, casting a pool of warm, amber light that fades quickly into the surrounding blue-gray darkness. The light does not push back the dark. It merely exists within it, illuminating the dust motes that hang suspended in the freezing air, tiny specks of matter that drift slowly, rising and falling with the unseen currents of the room. The pilot stands near the workbench, a silhouette against the far wall. He is motionless, a study in texture and bulk. He is preparing for the ascent, a ritual that requires the slow, methodical layering of defenses against the cold that waits above. The cold at 2,000 feet is different from the cold on the ground. It is an active, predatory force. It seeks out the smallest gap in the leather, the tiniest opening in the wool, and it enters, numbing the skin and slowing the blood. To fly the male at night is to wage a silent war against this numbness. He begins with the wool. The sweater is thick, knitted from coarse, oily yarn that smells of sheep and lanolin. It is heavy in his hands, a rough, scratchy armor that fits close to the body. He pulls it on, the fabric resisting, stiff with the ambient chill of the locker. Over this, he adds a leather vest, the hide worn and cracked in places, softened by years of oil and movement. It is the color of dried tobacco, a dark brown that absorbs the meager light of the lantern. He moves with a deliberate slowness. There is no rush here. The schedule is a number on a paper, but the night is a reality that cannot be hurried. He picks up the flight suit. It is a heavy, one-piece garment lined with fur, the exterior a thick, windproof canvas. The zippers are cold to the touch, the brass teeth biting into his fingertips as he pulls them up. The sound of the zipper closing is loud in the quiet hangar, a sharp, tearing noise that echoes briefly before being swallowed by the vastness of the space. He steps into the suit, feeling the weight of it settle on his shoulders. It is like stepping into a second skin, one made for a world that is not hospitable to human life. He adjusts the cuffs, tightening the straps to seal the wrists against the wind. The air in the hangar is cold enough that his breath forms visible clouds, ghostly plumes of white that escape his lips and dissipate into the shadows above. He turns to look at the aircraft again. The de Havilland is a collection of materials that seem too fragile for the violence of the sky. Wood, wire, fabric. The propeller is a massive piece of laminated mahogany, carved with precision, its surface varnished to a deep, glossy shine. In the lantern light, the wood grain glows with a deep, rich red, contrasting with the dark metal of the engine cowling. The engine itself is a block of cold iron, silent now, dripping oil slowly into a pan beneath the fuselage. The smell of the hangar is the smell of this machine: castor oil, high-octane gasoline, dope, old leather, and dust. It is a scent that sits heavy in the nose, a perfume of industry and solitude. The pilot walks towards the nose of the plane, his heavy boots echoing on the concrete. Clump, 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 a slow, heavy rhythm. He reaches out a gloved hand and touches the leading edge of the lower wing. The canvas is freezing, smooth and hard as stone. Under his fingertips, he can feel the ribs of the wing structure, the wooden skeleton that gives the fabric its shape. He traces the line of the strut, the vertical piece of wood that connects the upper and lower wings. It is streamlined, shaped like a teardrop to slip through the air. The bracing wires are thin lines of steel, crisscrossing between the wings. He plucks one gently. It vibrates with a low, dull hum, a note of tension that speaks of the tightness required to hold the machine together against the buffeting wind. The wire is coated in a thin layer of grease to prevent rust, and it leaves a faint smudge on his glove. The mailbags are stacked near the cockpit, a pile of nondescript canvas sacks. They are the purpose of this night. They are heavy, filled with bundles of letters, checks, contracts, and news. Thousands of sheets of paper, each one carrying a thought, a demand, or a greeting, all reduced to dead weight. The sacks are gray and tan, stained with the grime of travel. They have been thrown onto trains, dragged across platforms, and now they sit on the freezing floor of a hangar, waiting to be lifted into the sky. The pilot looks at them without curiosity. They are merely cargo. They are the reason he must leave the ground, but they are not the flight itself. He lifts the first bag. It is dense, settling heavily against his hip. He climbs up the small stirrup on the side of the fuselage, lifting the bag over the rim of the cockpit. He stows it in the forward compartment, pushing it deep into the darkness of the fuselage. He repeats this motion, a slow, repetitive lifting and pushing, until the pile on the floor is gone and the plane is laden with the silent voices of the world below. He climbs back down. The mechanic has appeared from the shadows in the back of the hangar. He is a dark figure dressed in greasy overalls, wiping his hands on a rag. He says nothing. In this trade, words are often unnecessary. The nod of a head, the thumbs up, the lifting of a chin, these are the communications of the night shift. The mechanic walks to the propeller. He places his hands on the smooth wood, preparing to pull it through to circulate the oil before the ignition. The pilot watches him. The lantern light casts long, distorted shadows of the two men against the hangar walls, stretching them out until they look like giants, flickering and dancing with the slight movement of the flame in the draft. The pilot walks to the tail of the plane. He inspects the rudder, moving it left and right with his hand. The cables creak softly, sliding through their guides. The hinges are stiff with the cold, the grease thickening in the low temperature. He forces the movement, working the surfaces until they move freely. He checks the elevators, the horizontal stabilizers that will control his pitch. They, too, are cold and stiff. Every part of the machine is in a deep sleep, a hibernation induced by the freezing air. It must be woken up gently, methodically. He runs his hand along the fuselage, the fabric drum tight. He can feel the texture of the weave through his gloves. The fuselage is painted a dark, midnight blue, almost black in this light. It is designed to disappear against the night sky, to become one with the void. He returns to the front. The mechanic is now checking the oil levels, peering into the dark recesses of the engine bay with a small flashlight. The beam cuts a sharp cone of white through the gloom, illuminating the complex tangle of pipes and cylinders. The metal glints cold and hard. The pilot puts on his helmet. It is made of soft leather, lined with chamois. It fits tight over his head, covering his ears, muffling the sound of the wind rattling the roof. He fastens the chin strap, the buckle cold against his jaw. Next, the goggles. They hang around his neck for now, the glass lenses reflecting the lantern light like two large, unblinking eyes. He pulls on his heavy gauntlets, huge leather gloves that extend halfway up his forearms. They are lined with wool and are clumsy, turning his hands into paws. He flexes his fingers, fighting the stiffness of the leather. He climbs onto the wing root, stepping carefully on the reinforced walkway. The surface is gritty, painted with a non-slip compound that feels like sandpaper. He swings his leg over the side of the cockpit and lowers himself into the seat. The cockpit is a small, cramped space, smelling intensely of leather and gasoline. It is a capsule of isolation. Once he is strapped in, he is part of the machine. The seat is hard, a metal bucket with a thin cushion that offers little comfort. He adjusts his position, feeling the parachute pack against his lower back. It is a lump of discomfort, but a necessary one. He finds the rudder pedals with his feet, the heavy boots filling the space. The control stick rises from the floor between his knees, a simple steel tube topped with a rubber grip. He holds it, moving it in a circle. The ailerons on the wings above and below him move in response, a silent semaphore in the dim light. The instrument panel is a collection of round dials set into a wooden dashboard. The faces of the instruments are black, with white numerals painted in radium paint. They glow faintly in the darkness, a ghostly green luminescence. The altimeter, the airspeed indicator, the tachometer, the oil pressure gauge, the turn and bank indicator. These are his eyes. In the darkness above the clouds, there will be no horizon, no ground, no stars. There will be only these glowing dials to tell him which way is up, how fast he is moving, and if the engine is dying. He taps the glass of the altimeter. The needle quivers slightly, settling at 0. He winds the clock, the small knob turning with a satisfying resistance. Time is the other fuel of this journey. He must know exactly how long he has been flying to calculate his position in the void. The mechanic steps back from the propeller. He looks up at the pilot. The pilot nods. It is time to wake the iron beast. The pilot reaches for the primer pump, a small plunger on the dashboard. He unlocks it and pulls it out, pushing it back in. 1, 2, 3, 4 strokes. He feels the resistance of the fuel being forced into the cylinders. The smell of raw gasoline becomes stronger, a sharp, volatile tang in the cold air. He sets the magneto switches to off. He calls out, his voice muffled by the helmet, "Switch off." The mechanic repeats, "Switch off." The mechanic steps forward, grabs the propeller blade and pulls it down with a heavy grunt. The engine turns over with a wheezing, sucking sound. The oil in the cylinders is thick, resisting the movement. The mechanic pulls again, and again. The sound is rhythmic, suck, wheeze, clank, suck, wheeze, clank. The internal organs of the machine are being primed. "Contact," the pilot says, flipping the magneto switches to on. The switches click loudly in the silence. "Contact," the mechanic repeats. He positions himself carefully, finding his footing on the slick concrete. He reaches up, grasping the blade with both hands. He swings his leg, building momentum. Then, with a sudden, violent heave, he throws his weight down and away, pulling the propeller through the compression stroke. For a second there is nothing. Then a cough, a sharp, explosive bang from the exhaust stack that echoes like a gunshot in the enclosed hangar. A puff of blue smoke shoots out, illuminated by the lantern. The propeller spins a few degrees and stops. The silence rushes back in, heavier than before. The cold seems to deepen. The mechanic steps back in, resets the blade. "Contact," he says again, The pilot nods. Another heave. This time the engine catches. It begins with a stumble, a chaotic series of misfires that shake the entire airframe. Bang, pop, rumble. Then the cylinders find their rhythm. The engine roars into life, a deep guttural thrum that vibrates through the floor, through the wheels, through the seat, and into the pilot's spine. The noise is deafening, a wall of sound that obliterates the wind outside. The propeller becomes a blur, a transparent disk of spinning force. The wash from the prop blasts back over the cockpit, hitting the pilot in the face. It is freezing, a hurricane of man-made wind that carries the smell of burning oil and exhaust fumes. The pilot pulls his goggles down over his eyes. The world becomes tinted, slightly sepia, slightly obscured. The mechanic pulls the chocks away from the wheels. He waves a hand, a gesture of release. The pilot pushes the throttle forward slightly. The engine note rises, deepening in pitch. The plane shudders, eager to move. It rolls forward, the tires crunching over the concrete. The transition from the static world of the hangar to the moving world of the taxiway begins. The pilot steers with his feet, tapping the brakes to guide the nose. He moves out of the circle of lantern light, leaving the warm amber glow behind. The nose of the plane passes the threshold of the hangar doors. The transition is absolute. He moves from the enclosed, still cold of the shelter into the wild, biting cold of the open night. The wind hits the plane broadside, pushing the tail, trying to weathercock the machine into the gale. The pilot corrects with the rudder, fighting the wind even before he has left the ground. The darkness outside is total. The sky is a solid overcast, a heavy lid of clouds that shuts out the moon and stars. There is only the faint, grayish reflection of the snow on the distant hills to mark the horizon, and even that is blurred by the mist. The plane taxis slowly across the grass field. The ground is frozen hard, uneven ruts and bumps transmitting sharp jolts through the suspension. The pilot feels every imperfection of the earth. He is bouncing in the seat, the harness straps digging into his shoulders. The engine creates a cone of noise that travels with him, a bubble of mechanical fury in the silent landscape. The exhaust stacks on the side of the engine glow, a dull cherry red, spitting blue flames that lick back along the fuselage. They are the only color in a world of black and gray. He reaches the end of the field and turns the plane into the wind. He stops. He holds the brakes. This is the final pause. The engine idles, a loping, impatient rhythm. The propeller ticks over, invisible in the dark. He scans the instruments one last time. Oil pressure steady. Temperature rising slowly but still cold. Amps charging. He looks out at the void ahead. There is nothing to see, just a black emptiness where the runway should be. He has to trust the line of the field, trust the memory of the land. He takes a deep breath, inhaling the smell of rubber and freezing oxygen. The cold is already seeping through the layers of wool and leather, finding the tips of his toes, the end of his nose. It is the passenger that will not leave. He pushes the throttle forward. The lever moves smoothly in its quadrant. The engine responds with a roar that shakes the very air. The plane strains against the brakes, the tail lifting slightly. He releases the brakes. The machine surges forward. The grass blurs beneath the wheels. The bumps become faster, a rapid-fire drumming. The tail comes up and the pilot can see forward now over the nose. He sees only darkness rushing towards him. He corrects with his feet, keeping the nose straight, chasing the invisible line. The speed builds. The wind becomes a solid force, screaming in the wires. The vibration changes, smoothing out as the weight transfers from the wheels to the wings. The earth loses its grip. The bumps stop. The drumming ceases. There is only the roar of the engine and the hiss of the wind. He is airborne. He climbs into the crushing dark, leaving the earth behind, ascending into the freezing solitude of the night mail. The earth does not recede so much as it dissolves. The heavy, frozen mud that had gripped the tires only moments ago is gone, replaced by a fluid, unstable medium of rushing air. The transition is felt in the stomach, a slight lightening, a suspension of gravity that is the only grace the machine offers. The roar of the engine is no longer a sound that bounces off the ground and returns to the ear. It is now a vibration that radiates outward into an infinite, indifferent void, swallowing the noise as quickly as it is made. The pilot sits in the center of this noise, a static point in a universe of motion. The darkness below is absolute. There are no lights to mark the villages or the farms. The world has turned off its lamps, burying itself under the blankets of winter and sleep. There is only the black void beneath the wings, a deep, impenetrable ocean of shadow that offers no reference, no comfort, no horizon. The climb is a labor. The biplane does not soar. It claws its way upward, fighting for every foot of altitude against the density of the cold air and the pull of the earth. The engine drones, a monotonous, heavy note that speaks of exertion. The nose is pointed up, angled towards a sky that is indistinguishable from the ground. The pilot watches the altimeter. The needle, painted with that ghostly radium green, moves with agonizing slowness. It creeps past 500 feet, then 600. The movement is barely perceptible, a trembling progression around the dark face of the dial. It is the only proof that they are rising. Without it, the sensation would be one of hanging suspended in a dark fluid, motionless, while the wind rushes past. The air in the cockpit changes as the altitude increases. It becomes sharper, thinner, and significantly colder. The wind that whips around the small windscreen is not just a breeze. It is a solid wall of freezing temperature. It curls over the glass, seeking out the gaps in the pilot's helmet, the space between the goggles and the leather mask. It finds the exposed skin of the neck, a stinging, icy touch that feels like the scrape of a rough stone. The pilot hunches deeper into his coat, pulling his head down like a tortoise retracting into its shell. The wool collar is rough against his chin, frosted with the moisture of his own breath. Every exhalation is instantly captured by the slipstream, ripped away before it can even form a cloud, leaving only a rim of white frost on the leather edges of his gear. To the left and right, the exhaust stacks continue their rhythmic spitting. The blue flames are longer now, streaked with violet, pulsing with the firing of the cylinders. In the absolute darkness of the climb, these flames are the only light outside the cockpit. They cast a flickering, stroboscopic glow on the flying wires and the leading edge of the wing. The light catches the texture of the canvas, revealing the weave of the fabric, the layers of dope and paint, the tiny imperfections where the hand of a man smoothed the surface. It highlights the steel of the turnbuckles, making them gleam like dull silver coins in the night. The shadows dance and jerk, distorted by the vibration and the rapid pulses of the fire, creating the illusion that the wing itself is alive, shivering in the cold. The pilot's hands are heavy on the controls. The thick leather gauntlets isolate him from the machine, turning every movement into a clumsy, deliberate act. He cannot feel the subtle vibrations of the stick through the layers of wool and hide. He must fly by sight and by the seat of his pants, sensing the shift in weight, the pressure of the harness, the angle of the floor. He moves the stick slightly to the left, correcting a drift caused by a gust of wind he never saw coming. The plane dips a wing, then rights itself. The movement is sluggish. The cold has stiffened the cables, thickened the grease in the pulleys. The machine feels reluctant, as if it, too, would prefer to be back in the warm, amber light of the hangar, resting on the solid concrete. 1,000 feet. The air is smoother here, escaping the turbulence of the ground friction. The bumps and jolts of the lower atmosphere smooth out into a long, continuous undulation, like a boat riding a deep ocean swell. The rhythm of the flight settles. The engine's roar becomes a texture, a constant background static that the mind begins to filter out. It is just there, a physical presence, a wall of sound that supports the plane. If it were to stop, the silence would be louder than the noise. The pilot scans the panel again. Oil pressure is holding. Temperature is low, barely in the green. The engine is overcooled by the freezing blast. He reaches for the radiator shutter control, a small lever tucked away on the side of the cockpit. He pulls it up a notch, closing the louvers slightly to trap more heat around the engine block. The metal lever is freezing, the cold radiating through his glove. He looks over the side. The darkness is textured now. He can see, or perhaps he only imagines he can see, the faint, lighter patches of snow-covered fields far below, vague shapes of gray in the black. They are ghosts of the landscape there and then gone, swallowed by the mist. He is leaving the world of men. He is entering the domain of the elements. The isolation is profound. There is no radio in this machine to connect him to a voice on the ground. There is no navigator to share the solitude. There is only the pilot, the machine, and the mail. The sacks in the forward compartment are a silent weight, a ballast of human connection that has no meaning up here. They are just mass, changing the center of gravity, making the nose heavy. The mist begins to thicken. It starts as tenuous wisps, pale streaks that flash past the wings like spirits. Then it becomes a veil. The pilot looks up and sees the clouds. They are not the fluffy, white cathedrals of the day. At night, they are a heavy, oppressive ceiling, a layer of lead pressing down on the sky. They are dark gray, almost black, bruised with the weight of unshed snow. The plane rises towards them, a moth flying into a blanket. The gap between the machine and the cloud base closes. The air becomes damp. The crisp dryness of the cold is replaced by a wet, penetrating chill. Moisture begins to collect on the windscreen, tiny beads of water that freeze instantly into a rime of ice. The pilot reaches up with a gloved hand and wipes the glass. It smears, the ice stubborn and rough. He stops. It is better to look around the screen than to fight the frost. And then the world vanishes completely. The plane enters the cloud layer. It is a sudden erasure. One moment there is the dark void of the sky and the faint suggestions of the ground. The next, there is nothing but a swirling, milky grayness. The exhaust flames, which had been casting sharp shadows, now illuminate the fog. The blue light is diffused, scattering in the mist, creating a glowing halo around the nose of the plane. It is disorienting. The light bounces back at the pilot, blinding him to anything beyond the propeller. The darkness has been replaced by a suffocating, luminous gray fog that presses against the cockpit glass. Here in the cloud, the sensation of speed disappears. Without a reference point, without the ground moving below or the stars above, the plane feels stationary. It hangs in the gray soup, the engine roaring, the propeller spinning but going nowhere. The pilot knows this is an illusion. He knows he is moving at 90 miles an hour through a solid wall of vapor, but his senses tell him he is floating in a void. This is the danger. This is where the mind betrays the body. The inner ear, deprived of visual confirmation, begins to send false signals. It tells him he is turning when he is straight. It tells him he is diving when he is climbing. It tells him he is leaning when he is level. He forces his eyes down to the panel. He locks his gaze on the turn and bank indicator. It is a simple instrument, a needle and a ball in a fluid-filled tube. The needle stands vertical. The ball sits in the center. He is level. He is straight. He trusts the instrument over his own senses. He grips the stick, resisting the urge to correct a turn that isn't happening. The discipline is mental. It is a suppression of instinct, a surrender to the mechanical truth of the dials. The radium numbers glow steadily, 1,500 feet, still climbing. The altimeter winds on. The clock ticks. The compass card floats in its alcohol bath, the letter N bobbing slightly, pointing the way into the blind north. The dampness in the cloud is pervasive. It seeps into the cockpit, a cold, wet vapor that smells of ozone and wet wool. The pilot can taste it, a metallic tang on his tongue. The condensation on his goggles freezes, forming a web of crystalline fractures that obscure his vision. He pushes the goggles up onto his forehead, exposing his eyes to the raw air. The wind makes his eyes water instantly, the tears feeling hot on his freezing skin before they, too, turn cold. He squints against the blast, peering through the windscreen, trying to see through the glowing fog. There is nothing, just the swirling mist, lit by the exhaust, churning and boiling in the wake of the propeller. The wings are invisible now. He can see the struts near the fuselage, wet and glistening with moisture, but the tips of the wings are lost in the gray. The plane has no edges. It fades into the cloud, merging with the atmosphere. He is flying a fragment of a machine, a cockpit and an engine suspended in a nebulous nowhere. The sound of the engine seems muffled, dampened by the density of the clouds. The sharp bark of the exhaust is rounded off, absorbed by the moisture-laden air. It becomes a lower, thrumming vibration that resonates in the pilot's chest cavity. He adjusts the throttle, pulling it back slightly to level off. 2,000 feet. This is the cruising altitude. He trims the aircraft, adjusting a wheel on the side of the seat to relieve the pressure on the stick. The nose settles. The climb ends. The labor of the ascent is over. Now begins the endurance of the cruise. The plane picks up speed, cutting through the cloud like a knife. The air pressure stabilizes. The cold is absolute. It is a steady, unyielding presence that occupies the cockpit as if it owns it. The pilot feels his feet going numb, the sensation withdrawing from his toes. He wiggles them inside the heavy boots, a small, unseen motion to keep the blood moving. He checks the mixture control. At this altitude, the air is less dense. He leans the mixture, turning the knob to reduce the fuel flow. The engine note changes, smoothing out, becoming more efficient. He listens. The ear of the pilot is tuned to the specific harmony of the machinery. A missed beat, a drop in RPM, a change in pitch, these are the alarms he listens for. But the engine is steady. It is a de Havilland Gypsy, a reliable workhorse of iron and steel. It does not complain. It simply works, consuming fuel and air, turning the propeller, pulling them through the gray. The pilot settles into the rhythm of the flight. His body is still, preserved in the cold. His mind is active, scanning, calculating, monitoring. He is a watcher in the dark. The cloud layer is thick tonight. He wonders how high it goes. Will he break out into the clear sky above, or is this the world for the next 3 hours? A world of gray fog and blue fire. He decides to hold this altitude. Climbing higher means colder air, and there is no guarantee of stars. He accepts the blindness. He accepts the reliance on the glowing green eyes of the panel. The texture of the cloud changes slightly. It becomes darker, then lighter, patches of density moving past. It is like flying through smoke. The smell of the exhaust is stronger now, trapped in the slipstream that clings to the fuselage in the damp air. It is a comforting smell, the smell of combustion, of heat, of life. Outside the cockpit, there is only the freezing vapor. Inside, there is the fire of the engine. The pilot sits at the interface between these two forces. He is the link. He is the mind that guides the fire through the ice. He reaches into the pocket of his flight suit and pulls out a small map case. He does not open it. It is too dark to read and the cockpit light is too dim. He knows the route. He knows the heading, 340 degrees, north-northwest, towards the mountains that lie hidden in the dark. He puts the map away. It is a talisman more than a tool right now. He checks the compass again. The card has drifted. 345 degrees. The wind is pushing him. He applies a touch of left rudder, skidding the tail around. The compass swings back. 340. He holds it there. The struggle to fly a straight line in a fluid sky continues. The moisture on the wings is beginning to freeze. He can see a thin white line forming on the leading edge of the strut, a buildup of rime ice. It is rough, opaque, like a scab growing on the metal. Ice is the enemy. It changes the shape of the wing, destroys the lift, adds weight. He watches it closely. It is growing slowly. The cloud is not wet enough to be dangerous yet, but it is a warning. The sky is hostile. It tolerates his presence, but it does not welcome it. He must be vigilant. He must watch the ice. He must watch the gauges. He must watch the darkness. The minutes stretch out. Time becomes viscous, slowed by the cold and the monotony. The propeller spins, a blurred disk that slices the fog. The exhaust flames lick the darkness. The pilot breathes, a slow, rhythmic intake of freezing air followed by a cloud of steam that vanishes instantly. He blinks, clearing the dryness from his eyes. He is awake. He is alive. He is flying the night mail, and the night is long. The gray curtain of the cloud holds him, a solitary traveler in a suspended state of existence, moving through the sky but going nowhere, held in the grasp of the winter air. The gray is not a color. It is a condition of existence. It is a total immersion in a medium that erases distance and depth, reducing the universe to the span of a few feet. The pilot sits at the center of a sphere of visibility that ends just beyond the nose of the aircraft. Beyond the spinning disk of the propeller, the world dissolves into a uniform, luminous vapor. It is like flying inside a pearl, a milky, translucent void where light is scattered and trapped, having no source and no destination. The exhaust flames, those twin tongues of blue and violet fire, are the only fierce things in this soft, suffocating quiet. They paint the mist with sudden, rhythmic strokes of color, flashing against the swirling fog like lightning trapped in a bottle. The light reflects back into the cockpit, a ghostly pulsation that washes over the instrument panel, making the glass faces of the dials gleam with a wet, ephemeral shine. The pilot's world has shrunk to the interior of the cockpit. It is a small, cold kingdom of leather and brass, wood and glass. He knows every inch of it by touch, by the specific texture of the materials under his gloved fingers. The throttle knob is smooth, worn by the friction of countless adjustments. The rim of the cockpit combing is padded, covered in leather that has stiffened in the freezing air, feeling like frozen bark. The smell is constant, the sharp chemical scent of high-octane fuel, the burnt sweetness of castor oil, and the underlying pervasive odor of damp wool and cold metal. It is the scent of the machine, a perfume of industry that clings to his clothes and his skin, penetrating the pores. He watches the ice. It is no longer just a warning, it is a presence. On the bracing wires between the wings, the rime is growing. It begins as a fine white powder, a dusting of frost that clings to the steel cables. But the cloud is wet, supercooled water droplets suspended in the air, waiting for a solid surface to strike. When they hit the wire, they freeze instantly. The powder becomes a crust. The crust becomes a ridge. The wires, once thin, singing lines of tension, are becoming thick, white ropes. In the charcoal darkness of the night, they stand out with startling clarity, drawn in heavy strokes of white pastel against the deep blue-gray of the background. They look ragged, like old branches covered in lichen, vibrating in the wind. The aerodynamic purity of the wire is being destroyed. The ice disrupts the airflow, creating turbulence, a chaotic wake that tugs at the wings. He looks at the struts. The leading edges are collecting the same white deposit. It builds forward into the wind, a jagged crystalline formation that looks like coral growing on a reef. It is beautiful in a stark, deadly way. The ice is hard, opaque, and heavy. Every ounce of it is a burden the engine must carry. Every inch of it adds drag, pulling the plane back, slowing its progress through the thick air. The airspeed indicator shows the cost. The needle has dropped 5 miles per hour. The engine is working just as hard, the throttle is set the same, but the machine is laboring. The pilot pushes the throttle forward a fraction. The engine note deepens, a growl of protest against the added weight. The needle creeps back up, but only slightly. The ice is stealing the energy of the flight. Vibration changes. The accumulation on the propeller blades is uneven. A small patch of ice forms near the hub, then is thrown off by the centrifugal force, flinging against the fuselage with a sharp crack. Then another piece forms. The balance of the spinning wood is disturbed. A low-frequency shudder runs through the airframe. It starts in the nose and travels back through the wooden longerons up through the seat and into the pilot's spine. It is a subtle shaking, a trembling of the metal bones of the plane. The instrument panel blurs slightly. The needles on the gauges vibrate, widening into fuzzy fans of green light. The pilot grips the stick tighter, his hands absorbing the tremor. He is connected to the imbalance. He feels the struggle of the propeller biting into the heavy, wet air. He leans forward, peering through the windscreen. The glass is almost entirely opaque now, crusted over with a thick layer of rime. Only the small opening on the side where the slipstream rushes past offers a clear view. He tilts his head, exposing his cheek to the freezing blast to look out at the wing tip. The navigation light on the end of the wing is a small ruby in the mist. The red glass glows dimly, surrounded by a halo of pink fog. It is a lonely beacon, signaling to no one. There are no other planes in this sky. There are no eyes to see the red light. It burns for the sake of regulation, a rule followed in a void where rules seem abstract. The light illuminates the outer reaches of the wing, showing the fabric skin taut and shimmering with moisture. The ice is there too, a white line tracing the curve of the wing tip, a frozen outline of the machine's shape. The cold is settling into the pilot's body with the weight of stones. It is not a sharp pain anymore. It is a dull, heavy numbness that begins in the extremities and works its way inward. His feet are blocks of wood. He wiggles his toes, but the sensation is distant, as if they belong to someone else. The cold seeps through the leather of the boots, through the layers of wool socks, finding the bone. It climbs his legs, stiffening the knees. The heavy flight suit, lined with fur, holds the core heat, but even that is being slowly eroded. The heat of his body is a finite resource, and the infinite cold of the atmosphere is a relentless thief. He hunches his shoulders, pulling his neck down. The scarf wrapped around his face is wet with breath, frozen stiff where it touches the air. It chafes his skin, a rough, icy collar. He checks the clock. 20 minutes since the climb ended. 20 minutes of gray. It feels like hours. In the cloud, time loses its linearity. It expands, becoming a pool of duration rather than a sequence of moments. The drone of the engine is a hypnotic chant, a repetitive cycle of explosions and rotations that lulls the mind into a trance. Suck, squeeze, bang, blow. The cycle repeats thousands of times a minute, a mechanical mantra. The pilot's mind drifts, tethered only by the glowing green eyes of the instruments. He watches the oil pressure gauge. The needle is steady at 40 psi. The oil is the lifeblood, thick and viscous, pumped through the veins of the engine. If the pressure drops, the heart stops. The silence that follows would be the end. But the needle holds. The mechanics of survival continue. He thinks of the mail in the forward locker. The sacks are freezing, the paper inside turning brittle in the cold. Words written in warm rooms under yellow lamps are now traveling through a hostile upper world, suspended in the dark. Letters of love, bills of debt, news of births and deaths, all equalized by the indifference of the altitude. They are just cargo. They do not know they are flying. They do not feel the ice growing on the wings. They wait in the dark, passive and silent, while he carries them through the storm. The responsibility is abstract. He does not know the people who wrote them or the people who will read them. He serves the system, the network of connection that demands movement regardless of the weather. The cloud density shifts. The gray deepens to a charcoal black. He is passing through a thicker section of the front. The turbulence increases. The air is no longer smooth. It is roiled and chaotic. The plane bucks, dropping suddenly as if the air beneath it has been removed. The pilot's stomach lurches, rising into his throat. The harness straps dig into his shoulders, holding him down in the seat. Then a sharp updraft slams the wings, pushing the pilot down, compressing his spine. The wings flex, the wooden spars bowing under the sudden load. The wires sing a higher pitch, a note of stress. Thrum-um. The sound vibrates through the fuselage. He fights the controls, the stick kicking in his hand. The ailerons bite into the turbulent air, sluggish and heavy. He corrects levels, corrects again. It is a wrestling match with an invisible opponent. The rain begins. It is not water, not quite ice. It is sleet. Hard, frozen pellets that strike the aircraft with the sound of gravel being thrown against a tin sheet. Tick, 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 tick. A rapid staccato drumming on the fabric wings and the plywood fuselage. It is a loud, aggressive noise cutting through the drone of the engine. The pellets hit the windscreen, shattering into ice dust. They hit the pilot's helmet, stinging like sand. He ducks his head, shielding his face with the leather of his mask. The sleet is abrasive, scouring the plane. It strips the ice from the leading edges in places, only for new ice to form instantly in the rough patches. The noise is overwhelming, a cacophony of impact that fills the small space of the cockpit. The peace of the gray void is broken by this physical assault. He watches the turn and bank indicator. The needle wavers, dancing left and right as the turbulence buffets the tail. The ball rolls back and forth in its glass tube. Keeping the wings level is a constant micro-adjustment. His wrist flicks left, right, left. His feet tap the rudder pedals. He is flying by reflex, his body reacting to the motion before his mind processes it. The darkness outside is total now. The exhaust flames illuminating only the driving sleet, turning the streaks of precipitation into lines of blue fire. It looks like he is flying through a tunnel of sparks. The temperature gauge drops. The sleet is cooling the engine rapidly. The cylinder heads are losing heat to the wet onslaught. He reaches for the radiator shutter again, pulling it closed another notch. He must keep the heat in. If the engine gets too cold, the oil will thicken, the fuel will not vaporize, and the power will fade. It is a delicate balance. Too hot and it seizes. Too cold and it quits. He plays the lever, feeling the resistance of the cable. The metal is so cold, It burns his fingertips through the glove. Suddenly, the sleet stops. As quickly as it began, the drumming ceases. The silence rushes back in, filled only by the engine's roar. The air smooths out. The turbulence fades into a gentle rocking. The gray fog lightens slightly, returning to its milky luminescence. He has passed through the cell. The plane settles. The vibration of the ice-imbalanced propeller remains, a constant reminder of the accumulation, but the violent shaking is gone. He exhales, a long breath that fogs the inside of his goggles. He wipes them with a gloved finger, smearing the condensation. He is still in the cloud. There is no moon, there are no stars, but there is a change in the light. Above him, the gray seems thinner, less oppressive. It is a subtle gradient, a shifting of tone from charcoal to slate. He looks up. The top wing is a dark shape against the slightly lighter mist. He is near the top of the layer. He pulls back gently on the stick. The nose rises. The engine groans, lifting the weight of the ice. He wants to break out. He wants to see the sky. The altimeter winds up. 2,200 feet. 2,300 feet. The gray brightens. The exhaust flames seem less intense as the ambient light increases. And then the curtain tears. The plane surges upward, punching through the ragged ceiling of the cloud deck. In an instant, the world expands from a sphere of gray to an infinite dome of black crystal. The transition is shocking in its clarity. Below, the clouds stretch out like a vast, frozen ocean, a rolling landscape of dark waves and white crests, illuminated by the starlight. Above, the sky is a deep, velvety black, polished and hard, scattered with a million stars that burn with a cold, piercing brilliance. They are not the twinkling, friendly stars of a summer evening. They are hard, diamond points of light, unblinking and distant. They look like holes punched in the fabric of the night, revealing a blinding fire behind. The air here is incredibly clear. Gone is the wet, suffocating mist. This air is dry, sterile, and thin. It offers no resistance to the eye. The visibility is endless. The pilot can see the curve of the earth in the line of the cloud tops. The moon is rising to the east, a sliver of bone-white crescent that casts a long, pale light across the cloud floor. The light catches the ice on the wings. The rime that looked jagged and ugly in the fog now glitters like a coating of crushed jewels. The wires are thick ropes of silver. The plane is a diamond-encrusted bird flying over a sea of shadow. The relief is physical. The pilot relaxes his grip on the stick. The tension drains from his shoulders. He is no longer blind. He has a horizon. It is a false horizon made of cloud, but it is steady. He levels the wings, aligning them with the flat top of the cloud layer. He is skimming the surface, the wheels of the undercarriage just feet above the vaporous waves. The sensation of speed returns. He can see the clouds rushing backward, a blur of gray motion. He is moving. He is getting somewhere. But the cold is worse here. Exposed to the open sky, the heat radiates away from the plane and the pilot, sucked into the vacuum of space. The temperature drops another 5 degrees. The thermometer needle rests on the peg. It is bitter, biting, absolute. The wind that rushes over the windscreen is clear and invisible, but it carries the freeze of the upper atmosphere. The pilot shivers, a violent tremor that shakes his whole body. He clamps his jaw shut to stop his teeth from chattering. He hugs his elbows to his ribs. He is a small spark of warmth in a universe of ice. He looks to the north. The destination is still hidden, buried somewhere under the white blanket below, but he has the stars now. He finds Polaris, the North Star, hanging steady and bright above the nose. He checks his compass. It agrees. He is on course. He navigates by the ancient lights guiding the modern machine. The duality of the moment strikes him, the primitive reliance on the stars, the mechanical reliance on the engine. He is suspended between eras, between the earth and the sky, between the fire and the ice. He flies on, a dark speck against the starlight, skimming the roof of the storm, carrying the sleeping words of the world below into the silent north. The floor of the world is made of vapor, stretching out in every direction to the very rim of the visible universe is a landscape of frozen turbulence. The clouds, viewed from above, lose their softness. They become a geological formation, a vast white tundra of rolling hills, deep ravines, and sudden, jagged peaks that rise up to scrape the underbelly of the aircraft. In the starlight, this terrain is colorless, rendered in shades of ash, bone, and charcoal. It is a dead ocean, a sea of storm that has been paused in time, solidified into a sculpture of silence. The biplane moves across this expanse like a small, dark insect crawling across a sheet of rough, white paper. It casts a shadow on the clouds below, a distorted, fleeting silhouette that races to keep up with the machine. The shadow leaps from crest to crest, disappearing into the troughs and reappearing on the ridges, a phantom wingman that mocks the solitude of the flight. The pilot watches the shadow. It is the only thing that moves in the world outside the cockpit. The stars above are fixed, pinning the sky in place with their cold, diamond nails. The moon, a curved blade of pale light, hangs motionless in the east. Only the shadow and the plane possess the quality of motion. The sense of speed is different here. Without the blur of the ground, speed becomes a measure of distance from the static clouds. When the wheels skim the tops of the vapor, the sensation is of immense velocity, a rushing headlong into the void. When the cloud floor drops away into a deep canyon, the plane seems to slow, to hang suspended in the vast, empty theater of the night. The ice on the wings has changed character. In the wet gray of the cloud, it was a rough, opaque rime. Here, in the dry, sterile air of the upper atmosphere, the wind has polished it. The leading edges of the struts and the wings are encased in a smooth, translucent glaze that catches the starlight. The ice glows with a faint, internal luminescence, as if it has absorbed the light of the moon and is holding it trapped within the frozen water. It is a beautiful, deadly jewel. It alters the curve of the airfoil, disrupting the clean flow of air that keeps the machine aloft. The pilot can feel the heaviness in the controls, a sluggishness that speaks of the added burden. The plane wants to sink. It wants to go down, to return to the heavy air below. The pilot must hold it up, exerting a constant, subtle pressure on the stick, a silent argument between human will and the laws of gravity. The cold at this altitude is a physical entity with weight and texture. It is not merely the absence of heat. It is an active, crushing force. It presses against the canvas sides of the fuselage, seeking entry. It seeps through the floorboards, rising up around the pilot's legs like rising water. The heating system of the human body is fighting a losing battle. The extremities have long since surrendered. The toes are gone, replaced by wooden blocks inside the boots. The fingers are stiff claws inside the gauntlets, capable only of gross, gripping movements. The pilot beats his hands against his thighs, a slow, rhythmic drumming. Thump, thump, thump. It is a primitive dance to keep the blood flowing, to remind the nerves that they are still there. The sound is dull, absorbed by the layers of wool and leather. He pulls his head down further until his chin rests on his chest. The collar of his coat stands up around his ears, a wall of rough wool. He breathes into the space between his scarf and his chest, creating a small, temporary pocket of warmth. The air he exhales is hot and moist, smelling of coffee and stale tobacco. For a second, it warms his skin. Then the draft sucks it away, replacing it with the needle-sharp air of the troposphere. The cycle repeats. Inhale the cold, heat it with the lungs, exhale the warmth, lose it to the wind. He is a biological furnace burning fuel to heat the sky. The engine is the other furnace. The pilot looks forward at the cowling. The metal is dark, but he knows that underneath, the iron cylinders are burning with the violence of combustion. The heat from the engine travels back along the fuselage, but the slipstream carries it away before it can reach the cockpit. He is sitting just a few feet behind a fire, yet he is freezing. The exhaust flames are his only visual comfort. In the clear air, they are shorter, tighter, a focused jet of blue plasma. They do not illuminate the mist anymore. They simply burn against the black backdrop of space. They are the heartbeat of the plane, visible and fierce. Pop, 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 pop. The rhythm is faster than the mind can count, a continuous tear in the fabric of the silence. The instrument panel is a galaxy of its own. The radium paint on the dials has charged up, glowing with a steady, toxic green light. The numbers float in the darkness of the cockpit: 120 miles per hour, 2,500 feet, 1,800 RPM. They are the coordinates of his existence. He focuses on the oil pressure gauge. It is the most critical eye. The oil, thick and cold in the sump, is being forced through the engine by the pump. If the line freezes, if a seal bursts, the pressure will drop. The needle will fall. The engine will seize, and then the silence. The pilot treats the gauge with reverence. He watches it more than he watches the stars. It is the oracle of his survival. The needle is steady. The oracle promises life for now. The isolation is absolute. There is no radio. There is no voice from the ground to tell him the weather at the destination, to offer a word of encouragement, to break the shell of his solitude. He is the only living thing in the sky. The thought settles on him with a heavy calm. He is not lonely, he is alone. There is a difference. Loneliness is a longing for company. Aloneness is a state of being. He accepts it. He is a monk of the air, observing the rituals of flight in the cathedral of the night. The drone of the engine is his chant. The cold is his penance. The mail is his burden. He thinks of the letters in the hold. Thousands of folded sheets of paper, covered in ink. Arguments, apologies, contracts, gossip. They are sleeping in the dark, frozen stiff in their canvas sacks. The ink is cold on the page. The emotions contained within them are suspended, waiting to be thawed by the eyes of the recipient. He wonders if the people who wrote them are sleeping now, warm in their beds under heavy quilts, unaware that their words are flying through the stratosphere at 100 miles an hour, carried by a man who cannot feel his feet. The absurdity of it strikes him, the immense effort, the risk, the cold, all to move paper from one place to another. But it is the job, it is the duty, and in the order of the duty there is a kind of peace. The landscape below changes slowly. The cloud deck begins to break up. Great fissures appear in the white floor, deep canyons of darkness that reveal nothing of the earth below. The clouds are becoming scattered, turning into individual towers and fortresses rather than a solid sheet. The pilot navigates between them. He banks the plane gently, tilting the wings to skirt the edge of a massive cumulus tower that rises like a spectral castle in the moonlight. The white vapor looms above him, silent and imposing. He passes close enough to see the texture of the cloud wall, the swirling eddies of mist on its surface. It looks solid enough to walk on, but he knows it is a ghost. If he flew into it, he would be blind again. He stays in the clear, threading the needle between the storms. The air remains turbulent. The broken clouds indicate instability. Invisible currents of air, rising and falling, buffet the plane. The wings flex, the fabric shivering. The pilot rides the bumps with a practiced lethargy. He does not fight every motion. He lets the plane rise with the updraft, then settle with the downdraft. He only corrects the deviations that take him off course. He is dancing with the wind, following its lead while gently guiding the steps. The stick moves in his hand, a constant, fluid adjustment. Left, back, right, forward. It is a conversation between the man and the air, conducted through the medium of steel cables and hinged surfaces. He checks the map in his mind. He knows the route by heart. The landmarks are invisible, hidden by the night and the remaining clouds, but he knows the timing. He has been flying for an hour. He should be over the foothills now. The terrain below the clouds is rising. The safety margin is shrinking. He watches the altimeter, 2,500 feet. The hills rise to 1,500. He has 1,000 feet of buffer. It sounds like a lot, but in the dark, with the downdrafts of the mountains, it is thin. He listens to the engine note. Is it straining? Is the air thinner? He pushes the throttle forward a hair. The RPM rises. He wants a little more pull, a little more distance from the invisible rocks below. The moon moves higher in the sky. Its light becomes starker, casting long, sharp shadows across the cockpit. The shadow of the windscreen frame falls across the pilot's legs, a black bar that moves back and forth with the turn of the plane. The light catches the brass bezel of the compass, making it gleam. It touches the leather of the pilot's glove, revealing the grain, the cracks, the oil stains. The visual world is high contrast, a drawing in black ink and white chalk. There are no midtones, no colors. Just light and absence of light. The pilot feels like a drawing himself, a static figure sketched into the cockpit, erased and redrawn by the shifting shadows. His eyes scan the horizon. To the north, the stars are obscured. A dark band stretches across the sky, blotting out the constellations. It is a high cloud layer or perhaps a mountain range. It is hard to tell. The separation between earth and sky is ambiguous. The black of the land merges with the black of the low sky. He assumes it is weather, another front, another wall of gray to fly through or over. He assesses the height. It looks high, higher than he can climb with this load of ice. He will have to go under it. He will have to descend back into the darkness, back towards the blind ground. He delays the decision. For now, he stays in the light, in the cold, clear river of air between the cloud decks. He reaches for the thermos flask stowed in a holder by his knee. It is a difficult maneuver. He has to unclip the strap with numb fingers, pull the flask out, and unscrew the cup, all while keeping one hand on the stick and his eyes on the horizon. The flask is cold to the touch, steel that feels like ice. He manages to get the cap off. He pours a small amount of coffee into the cup. The steam rises instantly, a fragrant cloud that swirls in the cockpit draft. He lifts the cup to his lips. The coffee is lukewarm, but to his frozen mouth it feels scalding. He tastes the bitterness, the sugar, the faint metallic tang of the flask. He swallows. The liquid travels down his throat, a line of heat that centers him. It hits his stomach and radiates outward, a momentary reprieve from the numbness. He takes another sip, then screws the cap back on. He cannot afford to spill it. He stows the flask. The ritual is complete. A small injection of warmth to fuel the watch. The vibration of the engine seems to have settled into his bones. He no longer hears it as a sound. He feels it as a condition of his body. His teeth vibrate slightly when they touch. His vision vibrates. The world is buzzing. It is a hypnotic frequency, a lullaby of danger. It invites sleep. The monotony of the dark, the drone, the cold, it all pulls at the eyelids. The pilot fights it. He blinks hard. He shakes his head. He focuses on the specific details of the panel. The screw holding the altimeter is rusted. The glass of the oil gauge has a small scratch. The leather of the combing is worn smooth at the elbow. He forces his mind to catalog these trivialities, to stay anchored in the present. He cannot drift. To drift is to die. The ice on the wires is thicker now. The smooth glaze has built up, changing the shape of the cables from round to oblong. The wind sings a different tune over them. It is a lower, throatier whistle. Woo-woo. It sounds mournful, a dirge played by the atmosphere. The pilot listens to the song of the wires. It tells him about the air speed, about the ice load. If the pitch drops, he is slowing down. If it rises, he is diving. He uses his ears as much as his eyes. The sensory input is a blend of sight, sound, and vibration, fused into a single awareness of flight. The plane passes over a break in the clouds that is larger than the others. For a brief second, the pilot looks down into the abyss. Far below, on the unseen ground, there is a tiny, flickering spark, a light, a single solitary light in the middle of the black wilderness. It is yellow and weak, likely a farmhouse lantern or a fire. It is there for a heartbeat, then gone, hidden by the trailing edge of the cloud. That single point of light strikes the pilot with a sudden, poignant intensity. Someone is awake down there. Someone is tending a fire or reading a book or nursing a child. A life is happening in the warm, still air of a room anchored to the earth. The contrast with his own situation, suspended in the freezing, roaring, moving void, is sharp. He feels a sudden, strange affection for that unknown light keeper. They are the anchor. He is the kite. He looks back ahead. The dark band in the north is getting closer. It is definitely weather. The stars are vanishing one by one as the cloud shelf advances. The moon is behind him now, its light failing to penetrate the gloom ahead. The clear air is ending. The reprieve is over. The pilot tightens his grip on the stick. He adjusts his scarf. He checks the instruments one more time. Green eyes glowing in the dark. All steady. He prepares to leave the sanctuary of the starlight. He prepares to re-enter the gray. The machine drones on, indifferent to the change. It knows only the fuel and the spark. The pilot provides the will. He points the nose towards the encroaching shadow, steady and resigned. The night mail must go through. The open cockpit is a small boat on a vast, dark ocean, and the shore is nowhere in sight. The wind picks up, whistling a warning through the frozen wires. The cold deepens. The darkness waits. The boundary is crossed without fanfare. One moment the pilot is flying under the open, starlit vault. The next, the ceiling drops, the stars are snuffed out, and the darkness clamps down like a lid. The transition is marked only by the sudden disappearance of the horizon. The faint line where the black sky met the darker earth is erased, leaving only a uniform, impenetrable opacity. The plane is now sandwiched between the invisible ground below and the descending cloud base above. The space in which he can fly is compressing. The air feels heavier, compressed by the weight of the incoming front. The wind shifts, coming now from the side, a crosswind that crabs the plane, forcing the pilot to angle the nose into the darkness to maintain his track. The visibility is poor, but not yet zero. There is no fog here, just an intense, suffocating darkness. The moonlight is gone, blocked by the overcast. The only illumination comes from the exhaust flames, which now seem brighter, harsher, casting jagged, dancing shadows against the cockpit walls. The blue fire reflects off the propeller arc, creating a shimmering, translucent disc that hangs in front of the pilot's eyes. It is hypnotic, this spinning wheel of light, and he has to force himself to look through it into the black void beyond. He is searching for anything, a light on the ground, a break in the clouds, a reference point. But the world has been wiped clean. There is only the sensation of movement through a featureless fluid. He begins a slow descent. The cloud base is pushing him down. He eases the throttle back slightly, the engine note dropping a minor third. The nose dips. The airspeed increases, the wind whistling a higher pitch through the wires. He watches the altimeter unwind. 2,400 feet, 2,200 feet, 2,000 feet. He levels off. The air is rougher here, closer to the unseen terrain. The bumps are sharper, jarring the airframe. The wings flex and shudder. The pilot is tense, his muscles locked in a constant state of readiness. He is flying into the unknown, trusting the map in his head and the glowing dials on the panel. The cold is insidious. It has bypassed the defenses of wool and leather and is now attacking the core. The pilot can feel a shivering in his chest, a deep, internal vibration that has nothing to do with the engine. His breath comes in short, sharp rasps. The air is so cold it hurts his teeth. He presses his tongue against the roof of his mouth to warm it. The condensation inside his goggles is freezing again, creeping in from the edges like a white cataract. He wipes it with a numb finger, but the ice is on the inside, hard to reach. He pushes the goggles up for a moment, letting the raw wind hit his eyes. The tears stream back towards his ears, freezing on his cheeks. He blinks rapidly, clearing his vision, then pulls the goggles back down. The brief exposure leaves his eyes stinging and red. Below, the darkness is not quite uniform. There are shades of black. The forests are the deepest abysses, swallowing all light. The snow-covered fields are a slightly lighter gray, reflecting the minimal ambient light of the night. He strains to read the landscape. He needs a landmark, a river, a road, a railway line, anything to confirm his position. He has been flying on dead reckoning for over an hour. The wind drift, the speed variations, the compass errors, they all add up. The circle of uncertainty on his mental map is growing. He could be 5 miles off course, or 10. In these hills, 10 miles is the difference between a valley and a granite face. Then he sees it, a faint, dull glint in the blackness below. It is not a light, but a reflection, a river. It winds through the landscape like a darker snake, its surface catching a glimmer of the exhaust fire or perhaps some unseen starlight filtering through a thin patch of cloud. He banks the plane, turning to follow the line of the water. Rivers are the highways of the lost pilot. They lead to towns, to valleys, to safety. He follows the serpentine curve, descending another 200 feet to keep it in sight. The river is frozen in places, dark patches of ice alternating with the black, moving water. It is a lifeline in the void. He checks the compass. The river is flowing northwest. It matches the map. This is the Snake River or perhaps the Elk. It doesn't matter which as long as it flows the right way. He relaxes slightly, the grip on the stick loosening. He has a guide. He is no longer purely alone in the math of navigation. He is following the geography of the Earth. The engine drones on, a steady, comforting rhythm. The oil pressure is still solid. The temperature is low but stable. The machine is enduring. Suddenly, the snow begins. It does not start as a flurry, it arrives as a wall. 1 second he is following the river, the next he is flying inside a snow globe. The flakes are huge, wet, and heavy. They stream past the cockpit in horizontal white lines illuminated by the exhaust. They hit the windscreen, the wings, the pilot's face. It is a blinding whiteout. The river vanishes instantly. The ground vanishes. The world becomes a swirling chaos of white specks on a black background. It is dizzying. The visual noise is intense. The pilot feels like he is falling upwards or spinning. The strobe effect of the propeller cutting through the snowflakes is nauseating. He focuses on the panel. The instruments are the only truth. Turn and bank, level. Altimeter 1,800 feet. Airspeed 100 mph. He must ignore the swirling snow. He must ignore the sensation of vertigo. He grips the stick, locking his arms. He trusts the gyro. He trusts the needle. The snow is accumulating fast. He can see it building up on the windscreen, a thick white slush that freezes into a solid mask. He reaches around the side, wiping the glass with his glove. It clears a small patch, but it fills in again within seconds. He abandons the view forward. He looks to the side, down at the wing root. He can see the snow streaming over the airfoil, packing into the crevices. The weight of the snow is different from the ice. It is heavier, slushier. It sticks to everything. The plane feels sluggish, heavy in the nose. The center of gravity is shifting forward. He trims the tail, scrolling the wheel back to keep the nose up. The engine labors. The air intake is sucking in snow. The engine coughs, a terrifying, heart-stopping silence that lasts for a fraction of a second, then catches again with a bang. The pilot's heart hammers against his ribs. Carburetor ice. The moisture is freezing in the throat of the carburetor, choking the fuel flow. He reaches for the carb heat control. It is a knob near the throttle. He pulls it out. This diverts hot air from the exhaust manifold into the intake. It melts the ice, but it also reduces the power. The engine note drops, sounding rougher, less efficient. The RPM falls by 100, but the coughing stops. The engine runs, a throaty, gargling roar. He leaves the heat on. He has to. He trades power for reliability. The plane slows down. He is losing ground speed. The headwind is strong here, and with the reduced power, his progress is agonizingly slow. He is crawling through the sky, fighting the wind, the snow, and the cold. The cockpit is filling with snow. It swirls in through the open top, settling on his lap on the floor on the instrument panel. It melts on the warm glass of the dials, running down in rivulets of water that freeze again on the metal. His lap is a pile of white slush. His legs are buried. He brushes it away, but it returns. It gets inside his gloves, melting against his wrists, cold water trickling down his palms. It is miserable. A wet, freezing misery that soaks into the wool and the leather. He is wet now, not just cold. The dampness is a bridge for the frost to enter his flesh. He checks the altitude again, 1,800 feet. He is too low for this weather. The hills are rising. He needs to climb, but with the carb heat on and the weight of the snow and ice, the plane has no climb left in it. It is all he can do to hold altitude. He pushes the throttle to the stop. The engine roars, but the RPM doesn't climb much. The propeller is biting into thick, snowy air. He pulls back gently on the stick. The nose rises. The speed drops. 90 mph. 85 mph. The stall speed is 60. He is getting close to the edge. The plane shudders, a pre-stall buffet. He lowers the nose. He cannot climb. He is trapped at this altitude. He must turn back, or divert. He cannot cross the range ahead at this height. But turning back means flying into the headwind he just rode, which would now be a tailwind, but it would mean flying back into the storm he has already traversed. There is no good option. He decides to follow the valley. If he can find the river again, he can fly the canyon, staying low below the clouds, winding his way through the mountains. It is dangerous flying, scud running, but it is the only path forward. He drops the nose, descending. 1,500 feet, 1,200 feet. The snow is thicker down here if that's possible. He peers over the side looking for the black ribbon of water. The darkness is absolute. He strains his eyes looking for a change in texture, a variation in the black. There, a flash of dark gray. The river. He banks hard, sliding the plane down towards it. He levels out at 800 feet. The ground is terrifyingly close. He can see the tops of the trees now, dark, spiked shapes rushing past in the blur of snow. They are like spears pointed at the belly of the aircraft. He follows the river. It twists and turns. He has to bank sharply to stay over the water. The canyon walls rise up on either side, invisible in the dark but felt. He can feel the presence of the stone, the disruption of the air. The turbulence is violent. The wind funneling through the valley tosses the biplane like a leaf. He is wrestling the stick, fighting for every foot of airspace. The engine screams, the exhaust flames lighting up the snow-covered trees on the banks. It is a tunnel of noise and white chaos. The pilot is sweating now, despite the freezing cold. The physical exertion of flying the plane in these conditions is immense. His arms ache. His legs are cramping. He is hunched over the controls, his face pressed against the slipstream, eyes wide, searching the gloom. Every second is a crisis. Every turn is a gamble. He does not think about the destination. He thinks about the next 10 seconds, the next bend in the river, the next tree line. The snow changes to sleet again. It hammers the wings. The sound is deafening. Rat-a-tat-tat-tat. The ice accumulation accelerates. The plane feels heavier by the minute. The controls are mushy. He has to move the stick inches to get a response that used to take millimeters. The aerodynamic grace of the machine is gone. It is a flying brick, held up by brute force and momentum. He glances at the oil pressure. It flickers, just a twitch. The needle dips, then recovers. His heart stops. He stares at it. It holds steady. Was it a bubble, a piece of sludge, or the beginning of the end? He watches it, willing it to stay high. The engine sounds the same. The rhythm is unbroken. He breathes. Panic is the killer. He pushes the fear down, locking it away in a cold box in his mind. He flies the plane. The valley begins to widen. The oppressive sense of the walls recedes. The river broadens. He is coming out of the narrows. The terrain is flattening. He has made it through the pass. He exhales, a long, shuddering breath. The tension releases slightly, leaving him exhausted, drained. He climbs a few hundred feet, putting some distance between the wheels and the trees. He is still low, still in the snow, but he is not in the canyon anymore. The lights of a town appear ahead, a cluster of yellow pinpricks in the white void. It is a small settlement, a few houses, a church, a station. It looks warm, it looks inviting. He feels a pull to land, to put the machine down in a field, to walk to a door, to ask for heat, but he cannot. The mail must go through. He flies over the town, a roaring shadow in the night. The dogs bark at the sound of the engine, but no one looks up. He leaves the lights behind, flying back into the wilderness. The snow begins to lighten. The heavy flakes turn into fine powder. The visibility improves slightly. He can see the horizon again, a faint line of gray against the black. He checks the time. He has been in the air for 2 hours. He is halfway. The fuel gauge shows the tank is half empty. The consumption has been high with the climb and the drag of the ice. He does the math. It will be tight, but he has enough if the wind holds, if the engine holds. He settles back into the cruise. The emergency is over, but the flight continues. The cold returns with a vengeance, finding the sweat on his body and freezing it. He is encased in a shell of cold, damp clothes. He shivers violently. He thinks of fire. A fireplace with logs burning. A coal stove glowing red. He holds the image in his mind, using it to warm his thoughts. The physical reality is ice, but the mental reality can be fire. He flies on, a solitary will propelling a frozen machine through the endless winter night. The propeller spins, the exhaust spits blue fire, and the pilot waits for the dawn that is still hours away. The silence that follows the storm is not a true silence. It is a change in the texture of the noise. The violent, gravel-like hammering of the sleet against the fabric wings has ceased, leaving only the fundamental note of the flight, the deep, resonant drone of the gypsy engine, and the high, thin whistle of the wind in the bracing wires. The pilot emerges from the white chaos of the snow squall into a vast, cavernous clarity. The sky has opened up again, revealing a vault of deep, bruised purple and black, where the stars hang like suspended dust motes in a shaft of cold light. The air is no longer a solid wall of precipitation. It has become a fluid again, thin, dry, and terrifyingly clear. The transition brings a visual shock. The world, which had been compressed to the confused white swirling of the cockpit, suddenly expands to the horizon, a boundless plain of shadows and pale, reflected moonlight. The aircraft, now a heavy, ice-encrusted artifact, drifts through this stillness. The rime ice that gathered during the struggle in the canyon remains, clinging to the leading edges, the wires, and the windscreen. It does not melt. In this altitude and temperature, ice is a permanent addition to the airframe, a fossil record of the weather past. The pilot looks at the interplane struts. They are thick with white growth, distorted shapes that ruin the clean lines of the design. The ice looks like rough plaster applied by a careless hand, stark white against the dark, doped linen of the wings. It glitters with a dry, mineral sparkle in the starlight. The weight of it is a constant, subtle downward pressure, a hand resting on the top wing, pushing the machine towards the earth. The pilot's body is reacting to the aftermath of the adrenaline spike. In the canyon, the fight for survival had generated a flush of heat, a frantic energy that kept the cold at bay. Now, with the danger past and the monotony returning, the heat evaporates, leaving behind a damp, clinging chill that is far worse than the dry cold of the earlier flight. The sweat that soaked his wool underwear and the flannel shirt beneath his flight suit is cooling rapidly. It turns the fabric into a cold compress against his skin, sucking the warmth from his core. He feels the moisture freezing in the weave of the clothes, a stiffening of the garments that makes movement difficult. He is encased in a rigid shell of his own making. To move an arm is to break the seal of frozen fabric. To turn his head is to grind the stiffened leather of the collar against his neck. He settles back into the crew's attitude. The stick is held between his knees, requiring only a gentle pressure to keep the wings level. The air here is smooth, almost oily in its lack of turbulence. The plane slides through it with no resistance other than the drag of the ice. The engine, deprived of the rich, dense air of the lower valley, leans out. The exhaust note is sharper, a cracking sound that echoes in the thin atmosphere. The blue flames from the stacks are longer, leaner, reaching back like spectral fingers trying to grasp the wing root. They are the only color in the world, a vivid electric blue that fades into violet at the edges, pulsing with the firing order of the cylinders. 1, 3, 4, 2. 1, 3, 4, 2. The visual rhythm matches the auditory drone, creating a synchronized loop of sensory input that numbs the mind. The pilot checks the fuel. The gauge is a simple glass tube on the dash, a direct visual link to the tank in the upper wing. The level is dropping. The liquid bounces slightly in the tube, a dark amber column against the backlit panel. It is just below the halfway mark. The diversion through the valley, the high-power climb, the drag of the ice, all have exacted a toll in gasoline. He calculates the distance remaining. He runs the numbers in his head, a slow, sluggish arithmetic. Gallons per hour. Miles to go, wind speed. The equation balances, but only just. There is no reserve for another storm. There is no fuel for another diversion. He must fly a straight line now. He must trust the engine to sip the fuel, to turn every drop into distance. He reaches for the mixture control, leaning it out until the engine runs rough, then richening it just a fraction until it smooths. He is starving the engine to save the flight. Below, the landscape is a study in desolation. The forests have given way to a high plateau, a flat, frozen expanse of scrubland and frozen lakes. In the moonlight, the lakes appear as flat, black voids, holes cut into the texture of the snow. They are perfectly smooth, polished obsidian mirrors that reflect nothing but the empty sky. The snow on the ground is not a uniform white. It is a patchwork of grays and blues, textured by the wind. Long drifts stretch out like frozen waves, their crests catching the moon, their troughs deep in shadow. It looks like the surface of a dead planet preserved in vacuum. There is no sign of life, no lights, no smoke, no tracks. It is a wilderness that belongs entirely to the winter. The pilot stares at the instrument panel. The radium dials have become his entire social circle. They are the faces he watches, the companions he trusts. The altimeter is the optimist, always winding up, promising height and safety. The fuel gauge is the pessimist, slowly draining away hope. The oil pressure is the stoic, holding its ground, unwavering. He finds himself assigning personalities to the machines. It is a symptom of the isolation. The mind, starved of human contact, projects humanity onto the inanimate. He talks to them in his head. Hold on, old girl. Keep the pressure up. Stay warm. The thoughts are slow, drifting through his consciousness like the clouds drifting below. Sensation of speed has vanished completely. Suspended between the black ceiling and the white floor with no nearby reference points, the plane feels stationary. It is a vibrating room hanging in space. The propeller is a transparent wall. The wings are fixed shelves. The pilot feels as though he could step out of the cockpit and walk onto the wing, that he could stand there in the slipstream and look down at the world without falling. The concept of gravity feels abstract, theoretical. Only the cold is real. The cold is the anchor that binds him to physical reality. He begins to experience the gray man. It is a phenomenon known to those who fly alone for too long in the dark, a feeling of presence, a sense that he is not alone in the cockpit. It starts as a shadow in the periphery of his vision, a flicker of movement just outside the range of his goggles. He turns his head, but there is nothing there. Just the empty rear seat covered by a canvas to no cover, but the feeling persists. A weight in the air, a silent observer sitting behind him. It is not a malevolent ghost, it is a neutral witness. It is a projection of his own fatigue, his own mind splitting to keep itself company. He accepts the presence. He does not fight it. In the lonely architecture of the night sky, even a hallucination is company. He focuses on his hands. They are resting on his thighs, thick leather paws that look alien to him. He tries to flex the fingers. The movement is stiff, jerky. The leather of the gauntlets is frozen hard. Inside, his fingers are numb, the tips devoid of sensation. He wonders if he will be able to unbuckle the harness when he lands. He wonders if he will be able to walk. The cold has seeped into the joints of his knees, fusing the cartilage and bone. He feels like a statue carved from ice, seated in a machine of wood and wire. He is becoming part of the plane. The boundary between flesh and fuselage is blurring. The vibration of the engine is his pulse. The oil is his blood. The spark is his nerve. He looks up at the stars. They are sharper now than he has ever seen them. Without the filter of the lower atmosphere, they burn with a fierce, unblinking intensity. He traces the constellations. Orion the hunter striding across the southern sky. Cassiopeia, the queen in her chair, high in the north. They are the ancient map. He aligns the nose of the plane with a star in the Little Dipper. He uses the celestial pole to guide him. It feels primitive, elemental. A man in a canvas bird, following the same lights that guided sailors on wooden ships 1,000 years ago. The technology changes, but the dark and the stars remain the same. The wind shifts again. A subtle change in the pressure on the rudder. The nose wants to drift left. The crosswind is picking up. He corrects with his foot, pushing the heavy pedal down. The cable creaks. The plane crabs, flying slightly sideways to maintain a straight track over the ground. He looks down, trying to gauge the drift speed by the movement of the shadows on the snow. It is hard to tell. The ground is a blur of low-contrast gray. He hopes his calculation is right. If the wind is stronger than he thinks, he will be blown off course, missing the airfield, flying until the fuel runs out and the silence comes. Ideally, he should check the map, but the map is useless without landmarks. He is committed to the heading. He is a bullet fired into the dark. He cannot change his trajectory now. The drone of the engine changes pitch slightly. A momentary waver. The pilot freezes. His heart gives a single powerful thump in his chest. He scans the gauges. Oil pressure steady, RPM steady. It was a harmonic vibration, a momentary phasing of the sound waves, or perhaps a piece of ice flying off the prop. He exhales. The tension in the cockpit is palpable. The silence of the engine is the monster he fears most. That sudden cessation of noise, the wind taking over, the steep glide into the unknown. He pats the side of the fuselage, a gesture of superstition. Keep running, just keep turning. He reaches for the thermos again, but stops. His hands are too clumsy. The risk of dropping it, of jamming the controls with the metal flask, is too high. He licks his dry, cracked lips. He is thirsty, a deep, cellular thirst caused by the dry oxygen and the cold. But he denies it. He will drink when he lands, if he lands. The denial is another form of control. He creates small deprivations to prove he is still master of his body. The ice on the windscreen is growing inward. The clear patch he had wiped earlier is narrowing. The frost flowers are blooming on the glass, beautiful, intricate fern-like patterns that obscure the world. He watches them grow. It is a slow-motion crystallization. He can see the leading edge of the frost advancing, consuming the transparency. Soon he will be flying blind again, even in clear air. He leans to the side, putting his face into the slipstream. The air hits him like a solid slap. It takes his breath away. He gasps, inhaling the freezing wind. It tastes of nothing, sterile, vacuum-packed air. He pulls his head back in, his cheeks burning with the cold burn. He checks the clock. The minute hand has moved. It is 3:00 a.m., the dead hour, the time when the human spirit is at its lowest ebb, the time when the body wants to shut down, to curl up and sleep. The urge to close his eyes is overwhelming. It is a physical weight on his eyelids. He widens his eyes, stretching the skin, trying to force wakefulness. He sings a song in his head, a repetitive nursery rhyme, just to keep the internal monologue running. Row, row, row your boat. The banal lyrics loop against the backdrop of the cosmic void. Below, a train appears. It is a tiny worm of light moving across the black plateau. He sees the glow of the firebox, the trail of white steam illuminated by the engine's light. It is crawling slowly, laboring against the gradient. It is the first sign of human life he has seen in an hour. He watches it with a desperate intensity. There are people on that train, men shoveling coal, passengers sleeping in warm cars. It seems like a different universe. A world of warmth and steel rails. He is separated from them by 5,000 feet of freezing air, but the sight of them anchors him. He is not the only one moving through the night. He dips his wings slightly, a salute that no one sees. The train chugs on, disappearing behind a ridge. He is alone again. The plane passes over a frozen lake that is larger than the others. The ice is cracked, great fissures running across the surface in jagged black lines. From this altitude, it looks like a shattered mirror. The moon reflects off the good ice, a bright, diffuse glow that lights up the underside of the wings. For a moment, the cockpit is filled with a ghostly, underwater light. The pilot looks at his hands, illuminated in the blue glow. They look like the hands of a corpse, pale and stiff. He turns them over, looking at the palms. The lines of his life are hidden by the leather. He wonders what his future line holds. Does it end tonight in a snowbank, or does it continue to a warm bed? The oil temperature gauge needle twitches downward. The engine is getting too cold. The air is so frigid that even the heat of combustion cannot keep the block warm. He reaches for the radiator shutter control. He pulls it all the way up, closing the louvers completely. He needs to trap every calorie of heat. If the oil gets too thick, it won't flow. He watches the gauge. It stops dropping. It holds at the bottom of the green arc. It is a precarious balance. The machine is operating at the limit of its design envelope. It was built for green fields and summer days, not for the stratosphere of a winter night. He thinks about the mail sacks again. They are just behind the bulkhead a few feet away. They are silent, heavy passengers. He imagines the letters inside. He wonders if any of them are urgent, if any of them carry news that will change a life. He is the courier of fate, carrying the potential for joy and sorrow in a canvas bag. The weight of the mail feels significant, almost moral. It gives the suffering a purpose. He is not just suffering for the sake of movement. He is suffering for the sake of connection. He is the link in the chain. The moon begins to set. It sinks towards the western horizon, getting larger and more orange as it descends through the thicker layers of the atmosphere. The light in the cockpit changes from blue to a dull, rusty amber. The shadows lengthen, stretching across the floorboards. The world is getting darker. The brief respite of the moonlight is ending. Soon, it will be just the stars and the exhaust flames again. The pilot watches the moon go. It slips below the jagged line of the distant mountains, extinguishing itself like a candle. The darkness rushes back in, absolute and heavy. The pilot adjusts his scarf. He pulls it up over his nose, tucking it under his goggles. The wool is wet and frozen, a mask of ice. He breathes through it, the air filtering through the frozen fibers. It is suffocating, but it keeps the frostbite off his nose. He is a creature of adaptation, modifying his environment with scraps of cloth and leather. He checks the compass. 340 degrees, still true. The wind drift seems to have stabilized. He is making progress. Mile by slow mile, he is eating the distance. The vibration of the plane is a constant massage, working the fatigue deep into his muscles. He feels heavy, leaden. His head nods forward, chin hitting his chest. He snaps it back up. Stay awake. He slaps his thigh. Thump. The sound is dull. Stay awake. He looks at the blue flame. It dances and flickers. It is hypnotic. He forces himself to look away to scan the black horizon. He is searching for the dawn, but he knows it is too early. The night has hours left to run. He must endure. He must sit in the chair and hold the stick and watch the dials. That is the job. That is the life. The airframe creaks. The wood and wire contract in the deepening cold. A loud pop comes from the wing structure like a pistol shot. It is just a spar adjusting to the temperature, but it makes him jump. The machine is alive, complaining about the conditions. He pats the combing again. I know, it's cold. He comforts the plane as he would a horse. They are in this together, two fragile things in a world of stone and ice. The flight continues. The drone, the dark, the cold. It is a cycle without end. The pilot exists in a state of suspended animation, a conscious mind trapped in a frozen body, hurling through the void at 90 miles an hour. He is the night mail pilot, and his shift is far from over. The moon has abandoned the sky. Its departure is not merely a loss of light, it is a withdrawal of companionship. While it hung in the west, it was a fellow traveler, a pale, silent face that offered a reference point in the void. Now that it has slipped below the jagged rim of the earth, the darkness is total and absolute. It is a heavy, suffocating substance that fills the space between the stars and the ground, pressing against the fabric of the aircraft like a physical weight. The pilot is now flying inside a sealed box of obsidian. The world outside the cockpit has ceased to exist as a visual reality. It is now only a theoretical construct, a memory of geography held in the mind, and confirmed only by the cold pressure of the air and the slow ticking of the clock. The light in the cockpit is reduced to the essentials. The radium dials, charged by the vanished day and the earlier moonlight, glow with a dim, sickly green luminescence. They are like deep-sea organisms floating in the abyss, their numbers hovering in the blackness, detached from any surface. The exhaust flames are the only source of true illumination. In the absence of the moon, they appear blindingly bright, twin torches of ionized gas that sear the retina. The blue is electric, vibrant, and alive. It pulses with a frantic energy, spitting sparks of carbon that streak past the wing and die instantly in the freezing slipstream. The light catches the propeller arc, turning it into a solid, shimmering shield of translucent violet. It catches the rime ice on the bracing wires, making them glow like neon tubes in a dark city. The pilot's eyes are fixed on this interplay of light and shadow. The repetition of the flash, bang, flash, dark, bang, flash, dark is a strobe light that synchronizes with his brain waves. It induces a trance state, a separation of the consciousness from the body. He is no longer a man sitting in a seat. He is a point of awareness suspended in a cage of noise. He looks at his hand on the stick. It is a dark shape, outlined in blue fire. It moves with the tremors of the engine, a separate entity that performs its function without his command. He wonders in a detached, sluggish way if the hand belongs to him. It looks like a glove filled with sand, heavy and inert. The terrain below is rising. He cannot see it, but he can feel it. The air is changing texture. It is becoming disturbed, roiled by the unseen granite peaks that thrust up into the flow of the wind. The smooth, oily slide of the previous hour is gone, replaced by a subtle, uneasy wallowing. The plane lifts and sinks, riding the invisible waves of air that break over the mountains. These are the high passes, the barrier between the plains and the northern plateau. They are a graveyard of clouds and machines, a place where the earth tries to reclaim the sky. He checks the altimeter, 4,000 feet. It is not enough. The peaks here reach up to 5,000. He must climb. He must drag the ice-laden, fuel-heavy machine up into the thin, starving air. He pushes the throttle forward. The lever feels gritty, the mechanism stiff with cold. The engine responds with a deepening of its roar, a guttural complaint. The RPM needle creeps up, but slowly. The propeller is biting into air that offers less resistance, less substance to grab onto. The climb is not a surge, it is a crawl. The nose rises a fraction of a degree. The airspeed drops. The wires change their tune, the high whistle dropping to a lower, mournful moan. The cold at this altitude is a revelation. It is not just freezing, it is negating. It seeks to stop all molecular motion. The oil temperature gauge is the battleground. The needle is hovering at the very bottom of the safe range. The engine is overcooled. The slipstream, at 20 degrees below zero, is stripping the heat away faster than the combustion can generate it. The pilot reaches for the radiator shutter again, but it is already fully closed. There is nothing more he can do. He is at the mercy of the physics of heat transfer. He imagines the oil inside the lines, turning from a fluid to a sludge, moving sluggishly through the galleries, struggling to lubricate the bearings. If it stops, the engine stops. If the engine stops, the silence comes. And in the silence, the descent into the black rocks. He pulls his knees together, trying to preserve the last pocket of warmth between his legs. The vibration of the floorboards is transmitted through his boots, a numbing massage that has long since erased the sensation of his toes. He tries to visualize his feet. He pictures them inside the wool socks, inside the leather boots. Are they white? Are they blue? He cannot tell. The nerve endings have gone silent. He stamps his feet on the rudder pedals. Clump, clump. The sound is dull, distant. The plane yaws slightly, the tail wagging in response. He stops. The movement costs energy he does not have. The gray man is back. The presence in the rear seat is stronger now. The pilot feels a distinct pressure on the back of his neck, as if someone is leaning forward, breathing cold air onto his skin. He hears, or thinks he hears, a voice under the roar of the engine, a mumble, a whisper. It is unintelligible, just a low, human frequency mixed with the mechanical noise. Turn left, sleep, warm. The words are hallucinations, audio pareidolia born of the monotonous drone. He does not turn around. He knows there is no one there, but the feeling of being watched is comforting. It makes the cockpit feel less empty. He nods to the invisible passenger. I know, he thinks, I hear you. The ascent continues. The altimeter winds past 4,500 feet. The air is incredibly thin. The pilot finds himself gasping, his lungs working harder to extract the oxygen from the freezing atmosphere. He feels lightheaded, a dizzying, floating sensation that sits behind his eyes. The edges of his vision are blurring, the darkness creeping in from the periphery. This is hypoxia, the creeping thief of the high altitude. He forces himself to breathe deeply. Inhale, hold, exhale. The air is dry and sharp, scratching his throat like dust. He focuses on the rhythm of his breathing, syncing it with the engine. Suck, squeeze, bang, blow. In, hold, out, pause. Outside, the silhouette of the mountains begins to detach itself from the darkness of the earth below. As he climbs, the horizon drops and the jagged line of the peaks becomes visible against the star field. They are terrifyingly close. Great black triangles that blot out the lower stars. He is flying in a valley between two ranges, a canyon of air above the canyon of stone. The wind funnels through here, accelerated by the constriction. The turbulence increases. The plane is tossed sideways, a sudden, violent jolt that snaps the pilot's head against the headrest. He grips the stick, his frozen hands fighting the controls. The ailerons are sluggish. The ice on the wings has disrupted the airflow, making the stall speed higher, the control response slower. He is flying a compromised machine in a hostile environment. He looks at the wing tip. The navigation light is a red blur in the vibration. The ice on the leading edge is now a thick, corrugated ridge. It has grown forward, a grotesque extension of the wing section. It is disturbing the lift, creating a turbulent wake that batters the tail surfaces. The pilot can feel the elevator fluttering, a rapid-fire vibration in the stick that travels up his arm and rattles his teeth. He wonders how much ice the structure can hold. How heavy can the wings get before the physics of flight are overwhelmed by the physics of gravity? The equation is being tested, mile by mile. He passes a peak on the left. It is close enough that he can see the texture of the snow on its summit, illuminated by the starlight. It looks like a white bone protruding from the black flesh of the earth. He is level with it, 4,800 feet. He is skimming the roof of the world. The sense of isolation is profound. He is the highest thing in the landscape, a solitary spark of life and fire moving through a graveyard of geology. The indifference of the mountain is palpable. It has stood there for 1,000,000 years. It does not care about the canvas moth buzzing past its ear. The engine coughs, a single sharp hesitation. The pilot's heart seizes. The sound is like a hammer blow to his chest. He scans the gauges instantly. Fuel pressure, oil, RPM. The needle on the tachometer flickers, then steadies. It was a piece of ice from the intake or a drop of water in the fuel. The engine resumes its rhythm, but the trust is broken. The pilot is now hyper-aware of every beat, every vibration. He leans forward, willing the machine to keep turning. Don't quit. Not here. Not over the stones. The fear is a cold fluid in his stomach, colder than the air. He crests the pass. The ground below drops away suddenly, falling into the deep shadow of the northern basin. The turbulence eases as the constriction of the mountains is left behind. The air smooths out, becoming a calm, expansive ocean once more. He has crossed the barrier. He exhales, a long plume of steam that swirls in the cockpit. He is over the hump. The psychological weight of the mountains lifts, replaced by the endurance of the distance. He pushes the nose down gently, trading the hard-won altitude for speed. The engine unloads, the RPM rising a fraction as the gravity assists the propeller. The plane picks up speed, sliding down the invisible ramp of air. The descent brings a slight increase in temperature, or perhaps just a reduction in the wind chill. The thermometer creeps up from the bottom stop, though it remains deep in the freezing range. The pilot feels no difference. His body has reached a thermal equilibrium with the environment. He is cold, and that is his state of being. He does not remember what warmth feels like. He remembers the concept of fire, the word hot, but the sensory memory is gone, erased by hours of exposure. He is a creature of the cryosphere. He looks at the clock, 3:45 a.m. The night is endless. The dawn is a rumor, a distant promise that seems unlikely to be kept. He feels as though he has been flying forever, that he was born in this cockpit and will die in it. The memories of his life on the ground, the mess hall, the barracks, the taste of coffee, the smell of grass, seem like dreams. The reality is the vibration, the blue flame, the green dials, the black sky. This is the long form of existence. A continuous, looping present tense, where nothing changes but the odometer. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a piece of chocolate. It is hard as a rock, frozen solid. He breaks off a piece with his teeth, risking a cracked tooth. The chocolate shatters in his mouth like glass. He sucks on it, letting it melt slowly. The taste is sweet and bitter, a sudden explosion of flavor in a sensory deprivation tank. It gives him a small burst of energy, a tiny caloric spike to feed the brain. He chews slowly, savoring the texture. It is a small ceremony of life. The landscape below is now a vast, flat plain, the high plateau. It is covered in deep snow, a featureless white sheet that stretches to the horizon. In the darkness, it glows with a faint, ghostly luminescence, reflecting the starlight. It looks like a frozen sea, calm and deadly. There are no lights, no trains, no rivers, just the white and the black. The pilot navigates by the stars alone. He keeps Polaris on his right shoulder, slightly forward. He is flying north-northwest, into the deep interior. The ice on the windscreen has closed in further. The clear patch is now the size of a playing card. He has to lean awkwardly to see through it. He considers opening the side window, but the blast of air would be unbearable. He accepts the tunnel vision. He does not need to see much. There is nothing to hit up here. He just needs to keep the needle on the line, 340 degrees, 100 miles per hour. The math of the flight is simple. The endurance of the pilot is the variable. He begins to hum. It is a low, monotonous sound barely audible over the engine. It is a vibration in his throat that matches the vibration of the airframe. He is harmonizing with the machine. He is becoming the machine. The gray man in the back seat seems to be humming too, a duet in the dark. The pilot closes his eyes for a second, just a blink that lasts too long. 1, 2, 3. He snaps them open. The horizon has tilted. He jerks the stick right. The plane levels. Panic flares and dies. He is tired, so tired. The sleep is a heavy blanket trying to smother him. He shakes his head, rattling the helmet. Wake up. He looks at the exhaust flame. It is his focal point. The blue fire is the only thing that is awake, the only thing that is energetic. He draws strength from it. It is burning the ancient sunlight trapped in the oil, releasing it into the night. He is the keeper of the fire. He must tend it until the sun returns. He settles back into the seat, the leather creaking. The mountains are behind him. The plateau is ahead. The night continues. The wind whistles its high, thin song in the frozen wires, a lullaby for the sleepless. The plateau is a landscape of negation. It stretches out beneath the aircraft like a sheet of unwritten paper, a vast, featureless expanse of snow that has swallowed the geography of the Earth. In the profound darkness following the setting of the moon, the ground is no longer a distinct surface but a vague, looming presence, a lighter shade of black against the absolute void of the horizon. The pilot moves across this emptiness not with a sense of speed, but with a feeling of suspension. The biplane, encrusted with rime and heavy with the accumulation of the night, hangs in the center of a static sphere. The sensation of forward motion has dissolved. The wind that rushes past the open cockpit is a constant, freezing river, but the visual cues of travel are gone. There are no trees to blur, no lights to flash past, no hills to rise and fall. There is only the endless, flat monotony of the high desert winter. The time is 4 o'clock in the morning. This is the nadir of the night, the deepest valley of the circadian rhythm. It is the hour when the biological fires burn lowest, when the human spirit is most vulnerable to the crushing weight of the dark. The pilot sits slumped in the seat, his body a heavy, inanimate object wrapped in layers of wool and leather. The fatigue is no longer a feeling of tiredness. It is a systemic intoxication. It feels like a thick gray fluid that has replaced his blood, slowing his pulse, clouding his thoughts, weighting his eyelids with lead. He blinks, and the action takes a conscious effort, a slow, deliberate lowering and raising of the shutters. Each time his eyes close, the temptation to leave them closed is a siren song, a sweet, irresistible pull towards the oblivion of sleep. He fights it with small, physical acts. He bites the inside of his cheek, tasting the copper of blood. He flexes his stiff fingers inside the frozen gauntlets, forcing the knuckles to bend against the resistance of the leather. He shifts his weight on the hard metal seat, seeking a new pressure point, a sharp discomfort to pierce the fog. The pain is dull, distant, filtered through the numbness of the cold, but it is enough to tether him to the waking world. He is a consciousness trapped in a freezing room, tasked with keeping a machine alive. The engine is the only other living thing. Its rhythm has become the heartbeat of the pilot's existence. Thrum, 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 thrum. The sound is a thick, textured blanket that wraps around him, insulating him from the silence of the outer space. He knows every nuance of this noise. He can hear the individual explosions in the cylinders, the clatter of the valve tappets, the rush of the air into the carburetor. It is a symphony of iron and fire. In the vintage, pastel darkness of his mind, the sound takes on a visual quality, a series of heavy charcoal strokes that vibrate in the air. If the rhythm were to falter, the world would end. But the Gypsy engine is a stoic beast. It consumes the fuel and the air with a mechanical indifference, churning out power and heat, oblivious to the desolation it traverses. The pilot's eyes drift to the fuel gauge. The glass tube on the instrument panel is illuminated by the faint, ghostly backscatter of the exhaust flames. The amber column of gasoline is low. It hovers near the bottom quarter mark. The main tank in the upper wing is draining. It is time to switch to the auxiliary. This is a critical procedure, a moment of mechanical vulnerability in the smooth continuity of the flight. The pilot must reach down into the dark recess of the cockpit, find the fuel cock, and turn it without interrupting the flow to the carburetor. If he is too slow, or if an air lock forms, the engine will die. And at this altitude, in this cold, a stopped engine will not restart. The oil would congeal in seconds. He prepares for the movement. He mentally rehearses the action. Reach down, locate lever, turn 90 degrees left, watch pressure. He takes a deep breath of the freezing air, steeling himself. He moves his left hand from the throttle, the glove feeling massive and clumsy. He gropes in the darkness by his left knee. He feels the cold metal of the fuselage frame, the canvas wall, the bundle of control cables. Then his fingers find the brass handle of the fuel selector. It is freezing, biting through the leather. It feels welded shut by the cold. He applies pressure. It resists. He pushes harder, gritting his teeth. With a sharp click, the lever gives way and rotates. He holds his breath, his eyes locked on the fuel pressure gauge. The needle flickers. It drops slightly. The engine misses a beat, a single terrifying silence that lasts for a fraction of a second. The pilot's heart hammers against his ribs. Then the flow catches. The needle jumps back up. The engine roars on, the fresh supply of gasoline from the belly tank reaching the cylinders. He exhales, a long, shuddering release of tension that fogs his goggles. The transfer is complete. He has bought another hour of flight. The smell of raw gasoline wafts into the cockpit, a sharp, volatile scent that cuts through the smell of oil and ozone. It is the smell of energy, of potential distance. The cold is deepening. As the night stretches towards the dawn that is still hours away, the temperature continues to drop. The thermometer on the wing strut is pegged at the bottom of its scale. The air is a solid block of ice. It seeks out the smallest imperfections in the pilot's armor, a seam in the boots, a gap in the scarf, a zipper tooth that doesn't quite close. The cold enters these breaches like a needle, injecting numbness into the flesh. The pilot's feet are long gone. They are merely heavy weights at the end of his legs that he uses to push the rudder pedals. His knees are stiff hinges. His torso is a core of cooling embers protected by the sheepskin vest and the flight suit. He creates a mental image of a fire, a hearth in a stone cottage, peat burning with a low blue flame. He places himself in front of this imaginary fire, warming his hands. It is a trick of the mind, a hallucination of heat to counter the reality of the ice. The visual field is a study in chiaroscuro. The cockpit is a bowl of shadows, deep blacks and indigos where the light does not reach. The instrument panel is a constellation of green stars. The exhaust flame is a blue torch. Outside, the world is a monochrome drawing in charcoal and slate. The snow on the plateau reflects the starlight with a dull, matte finish. It looks like rough, handmade paper, textured and uneven. The shadows of the drifts are heavy, black strokes. The plane casts no shadow now. It is just a dark shape moving over a dark ground. The pilot feels as if he is flying through a drawing, a static image that is being scrolled past him. He looks at the bracing wires. The ice on them has thickened. The clear glaze of the high altitude has been overlaid with a rougher frost from the moisture on the plateau. The wires are now thick ropes, twice their normal diameter. They vibrate with a lower, coarser pitch. The drag is palpable. The plane feels heavy, sluggish. It requires more throttle to maintain the same airspeed. The pilot pushes the lever forward a fraction. The engine note deepens, a growl of protest. He is trading fuel for speed, burning the precious liquid to fight the air itself. He wonders how much ice the wings are carrying. Hundreds of pounds. The de Havilland is a sturdy machine, but everything has a limit. He imagines the lift bleeding away, the wings becoming heavy boards, the inevitable descent. He pushes the thought away. Fly the plane. Watch the dials. The gray man is quiet. The presence in the back seat seems to have settled into a doze. The pilot feels less scrutinized, more alone. The isolation is absolute. There is no radio traffic, no Morse code chirping in headphones. He is severed from the world of men. He is an astronaut of the lower atmosphere, exploring a planet that is hostile to life. The thought brings a strange, cold comfort. He is doing something difficult. He is enduring. There is a purity in the suffering. It strips away the trivialities of life on the ground. There are no bills up here, no arguments, no politics. There is only the wind, the ice, and the fuel. The simplicity is seductive. He reaches for the thermos. He needs the sugar, he needs the heat. The maneuver is practiced now. Clamp the stick with the knees, unclip the flask, unscrew the cap. The coffee is lukewarm, almost cold, but it is wet. He drinks it greedily, the liquid running down his throat. It tastes of stale beans and metal. It is the best thing he has ever tasted. He finishes the cup and stows the flask. A small drop of coffee falls on his glove. It freezes instantly, turning into a brown bead of ice. He picks it off and puts it in his mouth, melting it with his tongue. A tiny sphere of flavor. The windshield is almost completely opaque. The frost has grown inward from the edges, meeting in the middle in a complex crystalline pattern. It looks like a map of a frozen river delta, branching and interlocking. The pilot can no longer see forward through the glass. He has to lean out into the slipstream to check his heading. He does this periodically, a ritual of torture. He leans left, exposing his face to the blast. The wind hits him like a solid object, a hammer of air at 90 miles an hour. It tears at his eyelids, forcing tears that freeze on his cheeks. He scans the horizon, black, flat, star-studded, then pulls back into the shelter of the cockpit. He rubs his face with his glove, trying to restore circulation. The skin feels like parchment, dry and brittle. He checks the compass, 340 degrees. The needle swings gently in the alcohol bath. He is holding the line. The navigation is an act of faith. He assumes the wind is constant. He assumes his speed is constant. He assumes the map in his head is correct. He is connecting 2 points in the dark with a thread of logic and hope. If he is wrong, the error will compound with every mile. He could miss the destination by 50 miles. He could run out of fuel over the forest that lies beyond the plateau. He forces himself to trust the math. He is a machine of calculation. The airframe groans. A sudden thermal shift, a pocket of slightly warmer air rising from the snow, causes the wood to expand. The sound is a sharp crack that echoes in the quiet fuselage. The pilot doesn't flinch. He knows the sounds of the ship. He knows the difference between the groan of wood and the snap of a spar. The plane is settling into the cold, contracting, tightening. The fabric skin is drum tight. If he were to tap it, it would ring like a bell. The whole machine is under tension, held together by the cold and the wires. He thinks of the destination, the airfield in the north, a strip of grass cut into the forest, a hangar with a stove, a bed. The image is abstract, a distant paradise that feels unattainable. He cannot imagine stopping. The The state of flight feels permanent. The vibration, the noise, the cold, this is his reality. The ground is a memory. He wonders if he has forgotten how to walk, how to speak, how to be warm. He is becoming a creature of the air, a gargoyle fused to the cockpit. The snow below changes texture. The smooth, flat sheet gives way to a rippled, dune-like surface. The wind has scoured the snow, creating long, parallel ridges that catch the starlight. They look like the ribs of a giant, buried skeleton. The pilot watches them pass. They are mesmerizing. Ridge, shadow, ridge, shadow. The repetition induces the trance again. His head drops. His eyes close. He is asleep. For a second, a minute, he jerks awake. The plane has banked left, the nose dropping. The engine pitch has risen, a scream of acceleration. He grabs the stick, pulling back, leveling the wings. The horizon rushes back to level. His heart is racing, a frantic drum in his chest. He fell asleep. He actually fell asleep. The realization is terrifying. He was gone. The plane was flying itself, spiraling down towards the snow. He breathes heavily, sucking in the freezing air. Wake up! Wake up! He screams it inside his head. He slaps his face hard. The pain stings. He needs to stay awake. He looks for a focus point. The exhaust flame, the blue fire, he stares at it. He analyzes the color. The center is white hot. The middle is electric blue. The edges are violet. It flickers with the engine cycles. He counts the flickers. 1, 2, 3, 4. He forces his brain to process the data. He checks the oil pressure, 40 psi, steady. He checks the altitude, 4,500 feet. He lost 200 feet in the dive. He climbs back up. The discipline returns. The fear is a stimulant. The darkness seems to have thickened. The stars are slightly dimmer, veiled by a high, invisible layer of cirrus cloud. The transparency of the universe is fading. The pilot feels the ceiling lowering. The box is getting smaller. He is squeezed between the snow and the high clouds. He keeps the nose down, staying in the clear air. He cannot afford to go back into the cloud, not with this ice, not with this fatigue. He hugs the ground, keeping the black plateau just 2,000 feet below his wheels. The exhaust stack on the right side spits a spark. A piece of carbon, glowing red, shoots out and trails behind the wing, dying in the dark. It is a tiny meteor. The pilot watches it fade. Everything here is transient. The fire, the spark, the warmth. Only the cold is permanent. The cold and the distance. He begins to hallucinate again. Not a voice this time, but a visual. He sees a light on the wing tip. A lantern. Someone is standing on the wing holding a lantern. A figure in a heavy coat, faceless, holding a light against the wind. The pilot blinks. The figure remains. He knows it is a trick of the light, a reflection of the exhaust on the ice combined with the fatigue, but it looks so real. The figure is steady, riding the wing like a ship's prow. The pilot decides to ignore it. If the ghost wants to ride, let him ride, as long as he doesn't touch the ailerons. The pilot focuses on the panel. The green numbers are real. The ghost is not. The minutes drag on. Each one is a struggle. The clock hand moves with agonizing slowness. 4:15, 4:20. The pilot is counting the miles. At 100 miles an hour, he is covering 1.6 miles every minute. He does the math. 16 miles every 10 minutes. It seems pitifully slow. The world is too big. The plane is too slow, but it is all he has. He pushes on. The drone of the engine is the only prayer he knows. The plateau begins to show signs of ending. The flat horizon to the north is broken by darker shapes. The tree line, the great boreal forest that marks the boundary of the open land. He is reaching the edge of the emptiness. The forest means cover, it means a change in texture, it means he is getting closer. He welcomes the trees. Even though they are dark and jagged, they are something different. They are vertical. They break the monotony. He prepares for the transition. He checks the fuel again. The auxiliary tank is holding. The engine is happy. The ice is stable. He is a survivor. He has crossed the high desert in the dead of winter. He is still flying. He settles his hands on the controls, feeling the vibration of the wood and wire. The night mail pilot is a ghost in the machine, flying a cargo of paper through the kingdom of ice. The dawn is coming, but it is not here yet. The darkness holds him tight. The transition from the high, open plateau to the forest is a shift in the density of the darkness. The pilot leaves behind the pale, reflective expanse of the snow-covered scrubland, where the starlight had found some purchase, and enters a world of absolute absorption. The boreal forest lies below like a vast, black ocean, a limitless carpet of pine and spruce that stretches to the very edge of the imagination. In the vintage, hand-drawn aesthetic of this night, the trees are rendered in heavy, vertical strokes of charcoal, a dense hatching that obliterates the lighter gray of the ground. There is no reflection here. The trees drink the light. They swallow the faint illumination of the stars and the exhaust flames, returning nothing but a deep, velvet obscurity. The plane floats above this jagged surface, a small, vibrating mote suspended over an abyss of needles and wood. The soundscape changes subtly. Over the open plateau, the wind had hissed across the flat snow, a sharp, sibilant note. Here, over the millions of trees, the air is broken up, turbulent in a microscopic way. The wind roar is deeper, a confused buffeting that lacks the clean edge of the high desert. The trees disrupt the laminar flow of the Earth's breath, creating a layer of friction that reaches up to the aircraft. The pilot feels it as a change in the texture of the flight. The smooth, glass-like glide is replaced by a faint, continuous shudder, a vibration that feels like the plane is being dragged over a rough surface. The wings flex rhythmically, the wooden spars absorbing the energy of the uneven air. Thrum, shudder, thrum. It is the feeling of a boat moving over a choppy sea. The pilot looks down. There are no landmarks. The forest is a fractal chaos, a repeating pattern of black triangles that offers no unique features to the eye. There are no roads, no logging tracks, no frozen lakes to break the monotony. It is a wilderness of supreme indifference. If the engine were to quit now, there would be no field to aim for, no farmhouse to glide towards. There would be only the canopy, the dark, welcoming arms of the pines that would catch the plane and hide it forever in the deep snow beneath. The pilot pushes the thought away, but it lingers, a cold seed in the back of his mind. The engine is the only thing keeping him out of the trees. He listens to it with a renewed intensity. The gypsy drone is steady, but it sounds tired. The metal has been hot and moving for hours in the freezing air. It has a heavy, laboring quality, a mechanical weariness that matches the pilot's own. The cold has now penetrated the deepest recesses of the cockpit. The warmth of the engine, which had provided a psychological buffer earlier in the flight, seems to have dissipated entirely. The air that leaks around the edges of the windscreen and through the floorboards is at its lowest temperature of the night. It is the pre-dawn chill, the moment when the atmosphere drains the last calories of heat from the earth before the sun returns. The pilot is a statue of ice. His flight suit, once a flexible garment of canvas and wool, is now a rigid exoskeleton. The moisture from the snow squall has frozen hard, turning the fabric into a stiff shell that resists every movement. To check the fuel gauge requires a cracking of this shell, a physical effort to bend the elbow that sends a spike of dull pain through the frozen joint. He looks at the gauge. The auxiliary tank is draining. The amber level in the glass tube is dropping with a terrifying steadiness. It is an hourglass of liquid, measuring the remaining lifespan of the flight. He calculates the burn rate again. The drag from the ice on the wings and wires is the variable that ruins the math. He is burning more fuel to maintain the same airspeed. The efficiency of the de Havilland has been compromised by the winter. He taps the glass with a gloved finger. The liquid bounces, confirming the level. It is low, but it should be enough. Should be. The words hang in the silence of his mind. Navigation is an act of faith. Fuel management is an act of hope. The gray man in the back seat has become part of the airframe. The sensation of a presence is no longer a distinct hallucination. It is just a fact of the environment. The pilot feels a camaraderie with this phantom passenger. They are both enduring the same cold, the same noise, the same dark. He imagines the gray man is also watching the instruments, also listening to the engine. It is a shared vigil. The pilot does not turn around. He stares forward through the narrowing aperture of the frosted windscreen. The frost has advanced further, leaving only a tiny, jagged hole in the center of the glass, a peephole into the void. Through it, he sees the propeller boss spinning, the blur of the blades, and the black wall of the night. The stars above are beginning to change. They are not fading, not yet, but the background against which they burn is shifting. The deep, absolute black of the midnight zenith is softening, turning into a profound, dark indigo. It is the false dawn, the zodiacal light that precedes the true morning. It is a subtle shift, visible only to eyes that have been starved of light for hours. The pilot notices it as a change in the contrast of the wing struts. They stand out more sharply against the eastern sky. The silhouette of the plane is becoming harder, more defined. The world is slowly, agonizingly preparing to wake up, but the cold intensifies with this shift. It is a paradox of the dawn. The light brings a drop in temperature. The pilot shivers, a violent, convulsive spasm that shakes his hands on the stick. The plane dips in response. He clamps his jaw, grinding his teeth to stop the chatter. He focuses on his toes. He tries to wiggle them. Nothing. They are silent blocks of wood. He focuses on his fingers. He can move them, but they feel thick, swollen, disconnected from his brain. He is operating the machine by remote control, sending signals down long, frozen telegraph wires of nerves to distant extremities. He reaches for the map case, but his hands are too clumsy to open the snap. He abandons the effort. He knows where he is. He is over the great woods. The destination is at the northern edge of this forest where the timber gives way to the mining towns. He has to trust the heading. 340 degrees. He checks the compass. The fluid is thick, the card moving sluggishly. It reads 335. He corrects. The wind must have shifted again, backing to the west. He crabs the nose into the drift. The navigation is a constant negotiation with the invisible currents of the air. The exhaust flames are less brilliant now against the slightly lighter sky. The electric blue is fading to a pale violet. The hypnotic strobing effect is diminished. The pilot misses it. The fire was his friend. Now, as the gray light creeps in, the fire looks smaller, weaker. It is no longer a torch. It is just waste gas burning. The magic of the night is wearing off, revealing the harsh, mechanical reality of the morning. The plane is just a collection of wood and metal, dirty with oil, covered in ice, struggling through the air. The romance of the flight is gone. Only the labor remains. He passes over a break in the forest, a logging cut. A straight geometric line sliced through the organic chaos of the trees. It is covered in snow, a white scar on the dark land. For a second, he sees the shadow of the plane flitting across the white strip. It is a distorted, long-winged shape, rushing to keep up. Then the trees swallow it again. The glimpse of the ground reinforces his speed. He is moving fast, yet he feels stationary. The trees blur into a continuous texture, a fabric of pine needles unrolling beneath him. The boredom is a physical weight. The mind, deprived of stimulation, begins to eat itself. It recycles old memories, playing them on a loop. The pilot remembers the taste of an apple he ate 3 days ago. The texture of the skin, the crunch, the juice. He remembers the smell of rain on hot asphalt in the summer. He plays these sensory clips over and over, trying to override the current input of cold and oil. He counts the rivets on the cowling. He counts the stitches on his glove. He is a prisoner of the cockpit, serving a sentence of time and distance. The ice on the wires begins to sing a different song. The air density is changing as the temperature bottoms out. The pitch rises, a keen, high wailing that sounds like a bow being drawn across a frozen violin string. It is a mournful, lonely sound. The pilot harmonizes with it, humming a low, tuneless drone in his throat. The vibration of his vocal cords warms his neck slightly. It is a tiny victory. He thinks about the landing. The transition from the sky to the ground is the most dangerous part of the flight. His limbs are stiff. His depth perception is warped by the hours of darkness. He worries about the flare. Will he be able to pull the stick back at the right moment? Will he be able to feel the wheels touch the snow? Or will he smash into the earth, a frozen meteor? He rehearses the sequence. Throttle back, glide, level off, hold off, stall, touchdown. He repeats the words like a mantra. Throttle, glide, level, hold. The eastern horizon is now definitely lighter. A band of slate gray separates the black earth from the indigo sky. The stars in that sector are gone. The moon is long gone. The sun is still far below the rim, but its heralds are arriving. The light is cold, flat, and merciless. It reveals the extent of the ice on the aircraft. The pilot looks out at the wings. They are shocking. The leading edges are built up with inches of white rime. The struts are encased in thick, irregular sleeves of ice. The plane looks like it has been dredged from the bottom of a frozen river. It is a flying iceberg. The fact that it is still flying is a testament to the lift of the airfoil and the stubbornness of the engine. He notices a change in the oil pressure. The needle has dropped 5 pounds. It is still in the green, but lower than it has been all night. The oil is getting tired. It has been sheared and heated and cooled for hours. It is losing its viscosity, or perhaps the pump is wearing. The pilot taps the glass. The needle doesn't move. He watches it with a hawk-like intensity. Stay there, he whispers. Just stay there. The mechanical empathy is painful. He feels the friction in the bearings as if it were sand in his own joints. The forest below seems endless. It goes on forever, a black eternity of trees. The pilot feels a sudden crushing sense of insignificance. He is nothing. The plane is nothing. The mail is nothing. The forest is everything. It was here before him, and it will be here after him. The indifference of nature is the true theme of the flight. The cold doesn't hate him, it just is. The gravity doesn't want to pull him down, it just is. He is fighting against constants, against the fundamental laws of the universe. He drinks the last drops of the coffee. It is ice cold now, a sludge of dregs. He swallows it anyway. The caffeine is needed. His eyes are burning, dry and gritty. He blinks and the eyelids grate over the eyeballs. He wants to close them. He wants to sleep. The gray man is sleeping. Why can't he? No. He snaps his head up. He opens the side window for a second, blasting his face with the air. It is minus 30 degrees. It feels like a knife slash. He gasps, chokes, and slams the window shut. The pain wakes him up. The tears freeze instantly. He checks the time. 5:15 a.m. The dawn is dragging its feet. The winter sun is lazy. He calculates the remaining distance. 40 miles, maybe 30 minutes. It feels like a lifetime. He can do 30 minutes. He can do anything for 30 minutes. He breaks the time down. 5 minutes. Then another 5, then another. He sets small goals. Fly to that cloud shadow. Fly to that ridge. He hops from imaginary island to imaginary island in the sea of time. The vibration of the engine changes again. A slight roughness. The spark plugs are fouling. The low power setting, the rich mixture, the long duration, it is taking a toll. The engine wants to be cleared. It wants to run hard and hot, but he cannot push it. He has to nurse it. He leaves the throttle where it is. He accepts the roughness. It is just a shudder, a cough in the throat of the machine. Keep turning, he prays. Keep turning. The sky continues to light. The gray turns to a bruised purple. The details of the forest become visible. He can see individual trees now, the spikes of the spruce, the rounded tops of the pines. He can see the snow on the branches. The world is gaining resolution. The mystery of the dark is being replaced by the clarity of the cold morning. It is a stark, ugly beauty. The colors are muted, desaturated, gray, white, black, dark green, no warmth, no gold, just the palette of winter. The pilot adjusts his posture. He sits up straighter, forcing his spine to uncurl. The vertebrae crack. He is preparing for the end of the flight. He is reassembling his body, gathering the scattered parts of his consciousness. He checks the seat belt. Tight. He checks the harness. Tight. He is strapped to the machine. They will arrive together or they will fall together. The fuel gauge is now uncomfortably low. The amber level is bobbing near the empty mark. The pilot stops looking at it. Looking won't add gas. He knows the burn. He knows the tank. It will be close. It is always close on the night mail. He focuses on the nose of the plane, on the spinning prop on the horizon. He is a needle threading the sky. The wind picks up. The morning turbulence. As the sun approaches, it stirs the atmosphere. The air becomes bumpy again. The plane wallows, heavy and unresponsive. The pilot fights the stick, his weary muscles protesting every correction. It is the final test, the last wrestle with the air before the release of the ground. He flies on, a small, dark cross against the lightening sky, carrying the silence of the night into the noise of the day. The forest waits below, watching, infinite and patient. The dawn does not break. It arrives as a slow graying of the charcoal sky. The absolute black of the night dilutes, drop by drop, into a heavy industrial slate. There is no sun, only a pervasive, flat illumination that reveals the world without warming it. The pilot sees the transition in the color of the exhaust flames. The vibrant, electric blue that had been his companion for hours fades, washed out by the ambient gray, until it is barely visible, a faint, ghostly shimmer of heat against the cowling. The magic of the night is stripped away, leaving only the raw, mechanical reality of the flight. The plane, which had felt like a living creature in the dark, is revealed as a weary machine. The fabric is stained with oil and soot. The wood is dull. And the ice is everywhere. In the merciless light of the morning, the burden of the airframe is shocking. The wing struts are no longer aerodynamic shapes. They are thick, jagged clubs of white rime. The flying wires are encased in sleeves of ice as thick as a man's wrist. The leading edges of the wings are rough and corrugated, a frozen coral reef growing into the wind. The pilot looks at it with a detached curiosity. It seems impossible that the machine is still flying, still generating lift with such a distorted shape. But the gypsy engine drones on, unaware of the ugliness it pulls, concerned only with the physics of rotation and combustion. Ahead, the forest breaks. The endless carpet of pine and spruce stops abruptly, giving way to a clearing that looks like a scar on the land. It is the destination, the mining camp, a collection of low, wooden buildings huddled together against the cold, their roofs buried under feet of snow. Smoke rises from a few chimneys, vertical columns of white that flatten out as they hit the wind sheer above the roof lines. In the center of the clearing is a long, white strip, the runway. It is not paved. It is packed snow rolled flat by heavy logs drawn by horses. It is indistinguishable from the surrounding fields except for the small spruce boughs stuck into the snowbanks to mark the edges. The pilot begins the ritual of descent. He pulls the throttle back. The movement is stiff, the friction of the control cable high. The engine note changes instantly. The deep guttural roar that has filled his ears for hours drops to a lower, popping idle. Pop, 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 pop. The propeller slows, the disc becoming visible as individual blades flickering in the gray light. The silence that rushes into the cockpit is startling. The wind noise changes from a high-pitched scream to a soft, rushing sigh. The wires stop singing and begin to whisper. The plane feels heavy, deprived of the thrust that held it up. It wants to sink. It wants to return to the earth. He dips the nose. The horizon moves up the windscreen. The airspeed indicator drops. 90 mph, 80 mph. The pilot manages the energy. He is trading altitude for speed, sliding down an invisible ramp of air towards the white line in the trees. The cold in the cockpit changes character. With the engine throttled back, the heat from the block diminishes rapidly. The slipstream feels sharper, biting through the layers of wool with renewed viciousness. The pilot shivers, a deep, bone-rattling tremor that he cannot control. He clamps his elbows to his sides, trying to hold himself together for the final act. He turns onto the final approach. The turn is sluggish. The ice-laden wings resist the bank, then resist the recovery. He has to muscle the stick, fighting the inertia of the frozen water. He lines up with the spruce boughs. The runway rushes up to meet him. The sensation of speed returns with a vengeance. At altitude, he was motionless. Here, 50 feet above the trees, he is a projectile. The tops of the pines blur past, dark green spikes threatening the undercarriage. He focuses on the snow. He is looking for the texture, the ripples that will tell him where the surface is. The depth perception is tricky in the flat light. The snow looks like a white sheet without dimension. He crosses the threshold. The trees fall away. He is over the open strip. He eases the stick back. The nose rises. The plane floats, settling into the ground effect. The cushion of air between the wings and the snow holds him up for a moment, prolonging the flight. The speed bleeds off. The controls go mushy. The stall warning buffer begins, a shudder in the stick, a vibration in the seat. The plane is done flying. He pulls the stick all the way back into his stomach. The wheels touch. There is no screech of rubber, just a soft, crunching thump as the tires bite into the packed snow. The plane bounces once, gently, a heavy, lethargic rebound, then settles for good. The tail skid drops, dragging through the snow with a harsh, rasping sound that vibrates through the fuselage. The transition is complete. He is no longer a pilot. He is a driver of a clumsy, winged sled. The plane rolls out, slowing rapidly in the friction of the snow. The bumps are sharp and jarring. The suspension creates a rhythmic clanking. The grace of the air is gone, replaced by the crude mechanics of the ground. He taxis towards the hangar at the far end of the field. It is a dark, cavernous mouth opening in the snow. A figure stands outside, wrapped in a heavy sheepskin coat, waving batons. The ground crew. The pilot follows the signals, steering with tired feet. The engine is coughing now, unhappy with the low RPM and the cold air. It spits and sputters, eager to sleep. The pilot reaches the apron. The figure crosses the batons. Stop. The pilot pulls the mixture control to idle cutoff. He starves the fire. The engine shudders one last time, consuming the final drops of gasoline. The propeller slows. Whir, clack, clack, stop. A blade comes to rest vertically in front of the windscreen, frozen in place. The silence that follows is not empty. It is a physical weight. It crashes into the cockpit, ringing in the pilot's ears. It is a silence so profound that he can hear the blood rushing in his head, a high-pitched whine that mimics the wind. He sits there for a moment, motionless. His hands are still gripping the stick and throttle. He has to consciously command his fingers to open. They are stiff claws molded to the shape of the controls. He pries them loose, one by one. The leather of the gauntlets creaks. He unbuckles the harness. The metal latch is cold enough to burn his skin if he touched it bare. The straps fall away, leaving his shoulders feeling strangely light. He tries to stand. His legs do not work. The knees are locked, fused by the cold and the hours of immobility. He has to grab the cockpit combing and haul himself up using his arms. He rises slowly, unfolding like a rusted hinge. The pain is immediate, a sharp, stinging rush of blood returning to the compressed veins. He grunts, a cloud of steam escaping his lips. He climbs out of the cockpit, stepping onto the wing root. The non-slip walkway is covered in ice. He moves carefully, a terrified shuffle. If he falls now, he will break. He feels fragile, brittle as glass. He lowers himself to the ground. His boots hit the hard-packed snow. The earth is solid. It does not bank or pitch. It is an immovable fact. He stumbles slightly, his equilibrium still calibrated to the fluid motion of the air, then catches himself against the fuselage. He pats the fabric side of the plane. It is cold, hard, and lifeless. The spirit has left the machine with the stopping of the prop. The mechanic approaches. He is an older man, his face hidden behind a scarf and a fur hat. He does not speak. There is no need. He sees the ice on the wings. He sees the pilot's stiff movements. He nods, a slow, solemn dip of the head. He reaches into the cockpit and begins to unload the mail. The sacks are dragged out one by one. They are gray, nondescript bags, just as they were when they were loaded hours ago and hundreds of miles away. They settle onto the snow with a dull thump. The letters inside have survived the void. They are safe. The duty is discharged. The pilot turns and walks towards the small shack attached to the hangar. The walk is a stagger. His feet are blocks of wood. He cannot feel the ground, only the impact of his steps. The wind is still blowing, whipping the snow around his boots, but it feels different now. It is a ground wind, an annoyance rather than an enemy. The shack has a small window glowing with yellow light. It looks like the warmest place in the universe. He opens the door and steps inside. The heat hits him like a physical blow. It is a wall of warmth, thick with the smell of a coal stove, stale coffee, and wet wool. The air is humid and heavy. He closes the door, shutting out the gray morning. The silence here is different. It is the silence of a room, enclosed and protected. The roar of the wind is reduced to a dull murmur in the chimney. He begins the process of shedding the layers. The gauntlets come off first, dropped onto a wooden table. Then the helmet. He unfastens the chin strap with trembling fingers. He pulls the leather cap off, his hair matted and damp with sweat that has long since turned cold. His ears are red, waxy, and burning. The blood is rushing back to the surface, bringing with it the screaming barfies, the intense, nauseating pain of rewarming. He hisses through his teeth, squeezing his eyes shut. It feels like his hands and ears are being crushed in a vice. He stands by the stove, holding his hands out to the cast iron. The heat radiates into his skin, a sharp, prickly agony that slowly turns into a dull ache. The mechanic comes in, stomping the snow off his boots. He carries a metal pot. He pours a mug of coffee and slides it across the table. The pilot picks it up. His hands are shaking so badly the liquid ripples, threatening to spill. He brings it to his mouth using both hands. The steam is a benediction. He takes a sip. It is hot, strong, and bitter. It burns his throat, a line of fire that reaches down to his stomach. It is the fuel of the ground. He sits on a wooden bench, leaning back against the rough-hewn wall. The fatigue washes over him in a crushing wave. It is not just sleepiness. It is a total system shutdown. His body is reclaiming the energy it spent keeping him alive in the thin air. His eyelids are heavy curtains made of lead. He looks at the window. The frost on the glass is thick, obscuring the view of the airfield. He cannot see the plane. He cannot see the sky. He can only see the white light of the day pressing against the pane. He thinks of the return trip. It will be tonight or tomorrow. The schedule is a wheel that never stops turning. The mail must go back. The engine will be warmed up. The ice will be chipped off the wings. The tank will be filled. And he will climb back into the cold box, back into the noise, back into the dark. The thought is not frightening. It is just a fact. It is gravity. It is the orbit of his life. He closes his eyes. The room spins gently. In the darkness behind his eyelids, he still sees the instruments. The glowing green numbers. 120 mph, 2,000 feet, 40 psi. He still hears the drone. Thrum, thrum, thrum. It is etched into his auditory cortex. He is still flying even as he sits on the bench. The body rests, but the mind is still in the slipstream, suspended between the earth and the stars. The mechanic says something, a low mumble about the weather, about the snow. The pilot doesn't answer. He is drifting. He is sinking into the gray. The cold is leaving him, replaced by the heavy, suffocating blanket of sleep. The fire in the stove pops and settles. The wind rattles the door latch. The cycle is complete. The night mail is delivered. The pilot sleeps, motionless and heavy, while the world outside continues its frozen, silent rotation. The screen fades to the texture of the dark paper. The drawing is finished. The lines are smudged into shadow. The lantern is extinguished. The story ends, but the wind does not stop.